I think that feedback was from me. That is very embarrassing. If you weren't already behind on schedule, I'd organise to do it all over again, but we don't have time for that. You're listening to John the Bond, and this is the Baller Skeptic Roundtable, episode 4, on the 1st of July 2015, and that was the Steve Miller Band with Abracadabra. I might have to re-upload that one, but anyway. Let's get straight into the action then. I'm joined by Matrix Decode live from Spain, who recommended that track, and apart from the fact that we stuffed it up there, Matrix, what did you think of the track?
Yeah, I like the track. I think we've got a bit of an echo going on, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I love that track.
Feedback was from me. That is very embarrassing. If you weren't already behind, we've still got feedback going on. What's going on here? Okay, we don't have time for that. You're listening to John the Bond, and this is the Baller Skeptic Roundtable. Does anyone know where that feedback is coming from?
That's coming from Ben.
Yeah, that came from me just then, actually, that last bit, yeah. Sorry about that.
Well, that's all right, mate. We all make mistakes, me included. We've also got with us today, deep inside the rabbit hole, a.k.a. David Weiss from New York. David, how are you today?
I'm doing good. I didn't think it was possible, but that was a rougher opening than PK's show.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe it, would you? We've also got with us, live from Britain, if I'm not mistaken, allegedly Dave, a.k.a. Dave Murphy. How are you today, mate?
Hello, mate. Very smooth opening.
I'm half tempted, as soon as this video is finished, to put it on private and re-upload with the proper song intro. That was well below our standards, but we'll try our best. Listen, today we're joined by a very special guest, so we better get straight into the action here. Our guest today comes to us live from South Africa, and the header image on his YouTube page is most appropriate. It's the silhouette of the photographer overlooking a sunset across a warm-coloured savannah. His channel is entitled My Perspective, and the tagline reads, "Questioning the World, an Artist's Perspective." And you can keep your eyes closed and live the dream, or open your eyes and live reality. Now, over the past 12 months, he's uploaded approximately 30 videos related to the Flat Earth topic, usually about 5 to 10 minutes in length, and focused on 3D graphic representations of the natural world around us, with an artist's explanation of how and why the spinning ball Earth model does not reconcile with what we see with our own eyes. His work has attracted almost 3,000 subscribers and about 200,000 total views. And like I said, that's just in the last 12 months. Now, although it's based on the concept of the flat Earth, a lot of his videos also often touch upon some more abstract and esoteric concepts, such as good and evil and who really runs the world. And not surprisingly, he intimates that the very people who are responsible for all of the ills of our society are also responsible for deceiving us about the true nature of the Earth that we stand on. So for these reasons and more, I have no doubt that today will be a very enlightening conversation. I do apologise to listeners that we started late, but we're here now, and we thank you so much for joining us live from South Africa. Rory Cooper of My Perspective. And that was your cue to jump in there and say hello, Rory. Can you hear us?
Sorry, John, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can, mate. You're coming in loud and clear. Thanks for taking the time to join us today, mate.
Thanks for having me. I'm sorry, I'm in an area, it's high altitude, and there's a few mountains in the area, and so sometimes we have a bit of technical difficulties with linking up to the web and so forth.
Oh, that's entirely understandable, mate. Well, we'll try our best, given the limitations. For those who are listening, we're getting Rory through Skype, then through the Hangout. So the audio quality today might not be the best, but we'll press on now. Rory, what we'd like to do is give you a chance to take a few minutes to just introduce yourself and explain not just what you do on your channel, but how you got into it and the kind of feedback that you've been getting from people. So take a few minutes now to give the listeners a basic idea of what you do and how long you've been doing it.
Well, thanks, John. My education and my experience comes from in the art field and the filming. I'm a cinematographer and a producer, and I film, edit, do clips for television, for broadcasting, for the film industry, adverts, and what have you. And my training was in fine art, and I studied fine art, technical drawing, and then I moved on into the advertising industry, doing finished art, airbrushing, and what have you. And in those days, you know, I was fortunate enough to have good art teachers. And the most important thing in art is it's not your technique. You know, those things are important, understanding color, and technique. But the most important aspect of all art and photography and filming is to be able to look properly and understand and take the time to understand what you're looking at. And most people don't do that. They have a preconceived idea in their mind, and that's what they go with. They don't look at something and stop and say, okay, what I'm seeing, do I understand what I'm actually looking at?
I understand. Well, for those who aren't aware, your channel's been up for about 12 months now, and you've uploaded about 30 videos. Do you want to explain to us when you first decided you'd start doing these 3D graphic representations of the Earth? What started you down this path of making these kinds of videos to upload to your channel?
Well, initially, for a while now, I've understood that the Earth is flat. It's a flat plane. The angles of the light and the shadows, they prove that. A few years ago, a few years now, it's about 10 years ago, I was on a small set of islands in the Mascarene Islands with some friends, and we were on a high elevation point, and the cloud level was with us, and we could see the sun, and we watched it for quite a while as the sun moved over the clouds, and the light rays were going through the clouds and then shining on the, making those hot spots on the ocean surface. And, I could see clearly what was happening. The sun's not 150 million kilometers away. It's right there. So I asked some of the guys that I was with, I said, look, where's the sun? And they said, no, it looks like it's just there, but it's impossible because then what we've been taught is wrong. So they could see it, but just failed to accept it. And, for myself, I normally don't get in. Before, I never used to get involved in discussions with people. I knew what I knew. I could see what I could see, and so I just avoided the issue. But more recently, I watched some videos on YouTube, and guys who understood that the Earth was flat were getting attacked and getting mocked. And so I thought, well, I've got certain skills, so let me just step up and use those skills and help people to see and to use their eyes and to say, look, it's a case of looking and understanding. Take a bit of time to observe things properly. And if you do, and question it. For example, if I've got a ball and I place a lot of pens into that ball, and I rotate the ball, and I've got a single light source, the shadows on top of the ball will only always face on top, and the shadows on the bottom will only ever face down. So as the ball rotates, that's the position of the shadows. And in the middle of the ball, those shadows will only move in a line. But yet we don't see that on Earth. If the Earth is a spinning ball, that means if you're in the north, your shadows should only ever face north. And if you're in the south, your shadows should only ever face south. But we don't see that. We see that as the sun rises, your shadow arcs and curves around you. And as it sets, the shadow's almost on the opposite angle to when the sun rose. So obviously the light, the sun, is orbiting overhead. And no matter what your position is on Earth, you have the same effect.
Well, Rory, my plan for tonight is we're going to break it into 3 parts of the show. We'll go around the panel and just ask some general questions about yourself and the work that you do. Then in the second part of the show, we'll focus on some of your videos in particular. I've been going through your back catalogue, so I've got plenty of questions about some of the stuff that you do. And then in the third part, we'll try and read out some of the questions from the live chat because we've got more than 30 people watching live right now, so hello to all of them. And thanks for sticking around when we had those difficulties at the start. What we'll do is we'll throw first to you there, Matrix. When you and I were sitting down talking about some of the people that we wanted to get onto the show, one of the first names that you brought up was Rory Cooper, my perspective, because of the 3D graphic representations that he puts together. Do you want to take yourself off mute and I guess get the discussion going about Rory and the good work that he does?
Yeah, thanks, John. Good to have you on the show, Rory. Looking into the flat Earth subject, I come across your channel, and you have lots of fascinating videos where doing these 3D animations and explaining things in a different way, from an artist's perspective, and we deal with things like the horizon, reflections, vanishing points, how we actually perceive things, and you've definitely been opening my mind to different possibilities. I mean, things like your videos about the moon cycles and the position of the Earth and the Sun and so on have been excellent. Yeah, I mean, what for you is the strongest proof? What are the strongest proofs of a flat Earth?
Oh well, first thanks, Ben. For me, it's a lot of little things. It's not one big thing. It's many small things. For example, just one issue is if you're on a board and you're rotating on a turning board, and you couldn't see the sun for 12 hours if it was spinning because the ball would be in your way. Yet we see the sun on average 12 hours. And for example, if you remember the sun is fixed. So if you're on a turning ball, and as you turned, your angle to the sun would continue to change. So your initial motion would be on the curve, and as you turned around the curve, it would be across the path of the sun. And as the sun set, your motion would be backwards. So if you work it out, basically the sun should rise very slowly and pick up speed, pick up speed, pick up speed, and at 12 o'clock it would be moving very quickly over your head. And then as it went to set on the opposite side of you, it should slow down, and the sunset should be very slow because of your angle. Yet we don't see that. The speed of the sun is constant. So that just that simple fact tells you you're not on a spinning ball.
Right, yeah. I mean, what about aspects of like curvature and the horizon rising up with you?
Yes, well, those are the more obvious things. If I can explain it like this, the world we're in is fake. It's like when you go into a camera shop and you want to buy a camera and you see a camera and it's the latest model and you pick it up. As soon as you pick it up and you feel it, and you'll see, well, it's plastic and the lens doesn't turn, so it's a display model. Within a few seconds, it's a display model, and that's what it is. It's there for displaying purposes. Then you'd ask for the real one, and you'd get the real one, and you'd try it out. Well, the ball earth is a display model. From when you're young, you get this display model, and it's only when you, as an adult, when you pick up this display model and you look at it, and you start to question everything about it, then you'll understand it doesn't work. It's a display model. And people live in this fantasy world where, the things that come with this display model, mentally they're in this mind trap. And if you get them to question it, their immediate reaction is to laugh and call you an idiot. But in actual fact, they're the foolish ones for not analyzing it and just believing everything you're told.
Yeah, definitely, I agree with you that. Dave, have you got any question?
Sure. Can you talk about your theories or observations of how the moon might work?
Okay, sure. From my understanding, the moon is a 3D object. Now, the speed of the moon appears to be constant. So for every 29 days, the moon will do an orbit over the Earth. Now, the speed of the sun is different. So if I look, and it's interesting enough, like the ancient Israelites, they counted their calendar off the moon and not off the sun. Because of the speed of the sun, it speeds up, and the orbit of the sun expands and contracts. Does one cycle, obviously every year. So from the equator to, for example, if I'm in the south, from winter to summer, it'll do one cycle. And the experience that we have on Earth is that, we're motionless and the sun is orbiting. Also, the fact that it's quite difficult to visualize and understand, because our whole understanding is what we've been taught is that the moon is orbiting the Earth, and we have the angles of the light that we see on the moon. So basically, the angles would stay the same if we're looking up at the moon. But exactly all the dynamics of it, I don't understand it. I don't know. But it appears to be a 3D object, and the cycles of the moon is constant, never changes.
When you say 3D object, are you thinking that the moon is a sphere?
It looks like it, and as far as my understanding of it, yes, it is a sphere.
So one of the big arguments that other ball Earth believers say is, I look through telescopes and I see the planets and I see the moon and they're all round, so why wouldn't the Earth be round? And I've looked through some high-powered telescopes and I've seen planets and they sure look spherical to me. My thought is maybe they are spherical and that the Earth is not a planet. We're looking at planets, but we're not on a planet, and that's the big confusion that most people have. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's exactly as you said. My feelings are exactly the same. I haven't studied it in depth. My observation, and that's why my videos, I look at the light, and I look at the shadows, and I look at the angle of the objects. And that's what I know. That's what I understand, because that's what I see. The mechanics behind it, well, I haven't done enough research into it to actually go and write a book on it. But I agree with you 100%, is that the fact that the moon is round doesn't mean that you're standing on a round planet.
Okay. John or Dave?
Well, we'll go to allegedly Dave there in Britain. Any questions for Rory? This is just a general discussion section of the show. We'll get into the more meaty discussion about his videos in a moment. But any general questions for Rory from South Africa for us at the moment, Dave?
Sure. I haven't really seen a lot of your videos, Rory, but funnily enough, one of the earliest things I saw when I started looking at this was a debunking video. I think it was the Earth is flat because Rory Cooper says so. And yeah, I see you've come across that one. So
yeah. Well, that's the typical reaction, and well, everybody's entitled to their opinion, and that's it,
Sure.
The issues that are brought up to debunk the flat Earth, normally it's in the form of ridicule, and it doesn't change anything. Laughing at somebody and calling somebody an idiot is not going to change the fact that
Indeed.
our observations, from our observations, is that the Earth is flat. I've never seen, if the Earth was a ball, we'd see it. The only images we have is from NASA.
Well, indeed, and this video was very, sneering and sarcastic. But I will say, it did supply the only thing that that really stopped me from completely believing the flat Earth is the whole Sigma Octantis, southern pole stars and the stars going around the wrong way. Have you got any thoughts about how that actually works?
Well, it's like anything. It depends which way you're facing. So if you're on a flat Earth and you're facing one way, and you turn and face the other way, your video clip will or showed going in the opposite direction. As simple as that. Not difficult to understand. And the same argument, they'd use the same argument. It proves nothing. Just your angle and what direction you're facing. For example, people don't think about this. If I'm on a spinning ball, right, and I set up my camera and I film the moon rising and setting. While in the north, it drives the one way, and a guy filming it in the south, if you put the two clips together, he would show doing the opposite, going in the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but aren't they actually saying that there is a southern pole star? It's not the same as the as Polaris, and it's.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, you see, I didn't deal with that aspect at all. You know, it's a bit like if you say the Earth's flat, then somebody's going to say, but what about this? What about this? What about that? What about this? Well, why do they expect us to know the answer to all these things?
Yeah, exactly.
I just dealt with one issue, and the issue was that there's two photographers. They're standing on the Earth, and both of them will produce the same image of the stars circling around them. There's a guy who's at the equator and a guy who's standing in the north. How can they both produce the same image if they're spinning? Now, if the Earth's spinning, the guy at the equator, he's not spinning around in a circle. He's moving in a straight line from west to east. How is it possible for him to point his camera and get the stars to orbit around his position? So the guy at the North Pole, he can do that, yes. But the guy at the equator, he can't. But you can go put your camera anywhere on Earth, and you can go and do not a time lapse, but a long exposure shot, and you can get the same image. How is that possible?
Yeah.
Now, that was the issue that I raised, and I did a video clip on that. And of course, then they jump up and they want to know why the moon is blue and why the sky is green and what, and that's it. And it's ridiculous. I mean, if they questioned that video clip that I originally did, I could understand it. But they went on all different angles and tangents, which just defeats the object of the whole issue.
Well, what we might do is, guys, we'll come back to some of the challenges to the Flat Earth model later on in the show. Right now, we're really just having a general discussion about our guest, Rory. What I might do is I'll play one of Rory's shorter clips now. This is the one called Flat Earth and the Artist with the Moon, and you uploaded this one about a year ago on July 20. So what I'll do is, Rory, I'll narrate it because obviously your clips use music and written text. So for the benefit of those who listen to this as an audio file, I'll narrate what's written on the screen. This is a 2.5-minute clip, and once we've played it, we'll come back and have a general discussion. And I want to play this so people understand that this is really what sets you apart from other people doing this kind of work, the fact that you use 3D graphics to represent the world to people and to show them how it doesn't accord with what we're told the world is. So let me play this. We'll be back in 2.5 minutes, and I'll narrate this one. So I'll get the rest of the panel to put themselves on mute. This is a full moon that you can see in the daytime. And so it shows the artists making a photo of, making a painting of the moon. This artist is painting the scene and pondering how is it possible to see a full moon in the day. And of course, most people know that we can see the moon in the day at times. Because the sun is 150 million kilometers away, the moon is in front of the sun at 400,000 kilometers away. And so far, none of these claims are controversial. This is all stuff that everybody has to agree with. Therefore, the moon viewed from the Earth will be completely black as the sun is directly behind the moon. And for those listening on audio, this is all shown in terrific 3D graphical representation. As the moon orbits the Earth, the light from the sun will start to light the side of the moon. Therefore, the moon can only be a full moon when on the opposite side of a full black moon behind the Earth. So as the artist is on the sun side or day side of the Earth, the full moon should be behind the Earth. it will be impossible for the artist to see a full moon in a day. The artist knows that the Earth is not a ball. As a person at the equator takes a photo of the moon, the light will be on top of the moon. We all see the light on the moon on the side of the moon. So there is only one way the artist can see the full moon in a day. If the Earth is flat and the Sun and Moon are on a similar orbit and the Sun is in front of the Moon. The artist then is happy that he understands the nature of the Earth, then ponders and appreciates the meaning of Psalm 124 verse 8. And that is a terrific video, 2.5 minutes, and for those of you who haven't already checked out the work of Rory, I really recommend you go and do it. Just listening to me narrate it, you're not getting anywhere near what you should get from the video. It's the visual representation that Rory's put together for us. And Rory, one of the first things that I wanted to ask you tonight was, how long does it take you to put these videos together? And again, I'll apologise to listeners. We've got Rory on Skype, so he might not be able to hear us at all times. Rory, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, mate, my question for you was, a video like that, that's 2.5 minutes long, but you've put it together on some kind of 3D graphic representation.
Yeah, it's taken about 3 hours, about two to 3 hours to do the animation. You know, I just set everything out in 3D space, and then you just animate the camera. So it doesn't take a long time. I should actually spend a bit more time on it, but you know, I'm working in that field, so I'm familiar with those, with the software, what have you, and I do it every day, all day. So when I do the clips that I have on my YouTube channel, I don't spend a lot of time on them, unfortunately.
Well, that video, I hate to interrupt you there. That video, basically when I first started watching your videos, the first thing I thought was, how much time does this guy put into these videos? I'm not familiar with 3D graphics software, but I can only imagine that you've put a lot of effort into this. And then, of course, it comes down to two things. People either put that amount of effort into something because they're getting paid to do it, or because they're very passionate about it. And when I watch your videos, I see someone who's passionate about exposing the fact that the spinning ball model doesn't work the way that we're told that it does. And in that video that we just played, you were discussing the moon and the fact that if we can see the moon, which is 400,000 kilometers away or something like this supposedly, and it's in the same sky as the sun, which is 150 million kilometers away, how can the face of the moon be lit by the sun?
Exactly. And you know, if you look at your angle, if your position on the ball Earth, there's no way you're going to see that. What people don't get, if I'm at the equator, okay, and the moon is orbiting me, remember, and the position of the sun is fixed at the same center point as the Earth. So the Earth, the sun, and the moon on the same plane, and the moon is 5 degrees from the plane. And that's a bit of a cheat, because 5 degrees means nothing. I can say something is 5 degrees from a center point, but it depends on the length, how far away each object is from that center point, is the actual distance it is from the plane. And yet nobody tells us that. What is the distance from the moon to the plane? I'll just tell you it's 5 degrees off. It means nothing. It's ridiculous. It's valueless information. But anyway, if you had if you're on a ball and the moon is orbiting you on a ball and the sun is fixed, you will see the light on the bottom of the ball and on the top of the ball as it orbits your position. So a person on the equator will only ever see the light on the top of the moon or on the bottom of the moon. Anyway, it's today's date. It's actually full moon. So today, as the sun sets, take a walk outside, and you'll see as the sun sets, you'll see the sun setting, and you'll see the moon rising in the east. You'll see both of them above the horizon, and it'll be a full moon today. So go have a look.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. Dave from Britain, allegedly. Dave, do you have anything that you want to add to this particular topic to do with the moon and the sun?
Yeah, oh, that's the whole unmute thing. Yes, I was just going to add this graphic that I used in my video, that just to show that the way that, there's no way you can actually see a full moon during the day from your perspective. Say if it was midday, for instance, that's point B on this graphic. There's nowhere that you can stand, or the moon can be, that you can see it as a full, as a full moon. The graphic is a little misleading because there are places that you could see a half moon, not just that sliver, but there's no way that you can see a full moon. If you're at point A, that's first thing in the morning, you can look back into the night sky and see a full moon. And obviously at point C, in the middle of the night, yeah, full moon is not a problem. But during the day, point B, no, there's no way you can actually see a full moon. So I did see the video of that you did, Rory, and I felt like I had to do it in 2D so that because I don't know, my mind seemed to work better in 2D.
Yeah, Rory, you can't see. Obviously, we've got Rory through Skype today, so we can't see the graphic that you're showing there, Dave. But basically, it's just a 2D representation of what Rory was showing in 3D. This idea that if the sun, just imagine a picture. You've got the sun on one side, the Earth on the other, and then the moon somewhere near the middle. Given the distances that we're talking here, that the sun is so far away and the moon is relatively close, how is it possible that when the moon is somewhere near in between the Earth and the sun, that the face of the moon facing Earth can be lit up? And whether we represent that via 2D or via 3D, it is a question that I remember asking as a child. I remember wondering, if we're seeing the face of the moon and the sun in the sky at the same time, does that mean that people on the other side of the planet can see neither? And I remember even back then, I didn't get an answer that satisfied me. But I think what we do as children is we just, even those of us who ask questions and who go along with these things, that's what we're doing. We just go along and then we stop asking questions. Rory, is that your phone in the background?
No.
So Rory, can I ask you, when did you first start questioning the heliocentric model?
Well, it was a few years ago, and when I had business to do, and I was going abroad, and while I was on the airplane, I was looking out the window, and I did a clip a few years ago with the airplane models and the Earth spinning, and it's still floating around on YouTube somewhere, and I phoned a few pilots all over, and I asked them, listen, what do you see if you're leaving LAX, for example, and you're flying to this place, or you from Spain to Japan? And I did a clip that clearly shows that the Earth's not spinning. But then I put that clip on YouTube, and a guy asked me a question, and I thought, this is a stupid question. But he asked me, do I think the Earth's flat? And I thought, this guy thinks I'm an idiot, because it's obviously not flat. But at that time, when I finished commenting to the guy, I just remembered issues that I had at art school, and when things that the art teachers were saying to me. I had one art teacher from the States who did technical drawing and did 3D perspective with me. It was one of the teachers that I was with for a few years. And everything that he taught me, and he was trying to tell me, all of a sudden just made sense. The lights and the shadows and the angles, everything made sense. And I just said, well, okay, it's flat, it is what it is, But I never spoke about it because, obviously you're going to get ridiculed and all the stuff that comes with it,
Yeah, I understand. And look, you have to, a lot of our listeners today are people who are completely on board with the flat Earth model. There are other people in the chat who are listening right now who aren't flat earthers, but they are starting to realize there's some serious problems with the spinning ball model. And this show is called the Ball Earth Skeptic Roundtable, and I guess we spend most of our time focused on looking at some of the problems with the Ball Earth model. And I know that the same people turn up in the chat every time trying to ask, or trying to debunk the flat Earth model, I suppose. And I guess that's a very useful exercise to engage in. At the same time, though, those people don't seem to want to acknowledge the problems with the spinning ball model. And if you're going to try and debunk the flat Earth model, I say that's good. We need to do that. But if you're not going to at the same time acknowledge the problems with spinning ball, then you're clearly not in this to get to the truth. You're clearly in this, bias towards one of the models. And it does, I don't want to say that frustrates me, but it does surprise me that people who want to pretend that they're truth seekers will attack one model, but they won't attack the others. And hopefully on this show we can spend a bit of time attacking the flat Earth models as well as attacking the spinning ball model, because right now in schools people are being taught spinning ball model. I was taught spinning ball model. I'm sure most of our listeners were taught spinning ball model. That's the prevailing model. I would argue that's where most of our attention should be spent when it comes to trying to attack things, especially because there's no single flat Earth model. I mean, you believe that the moon is a sphere, Rory. There are many flat earthers who don't believe it's a sphere. There are some people who believe it's a flat disk. There are some who believe that it isn't even an object physical. It's a light source. So when people come here and they say, let's attack the flat Earth model, which flat Earth model are you even attacking? Most of them don't know because they haven't actually done the research. So if you want to attack the flat Earth model, go to the Flat Earth forums if you're genuinely interested in the answer. If all you want to do is attack the Flat Earth model, just be open and honest. You are a ball earther who's devoted to the ball earther, who won't look at the problems with the ball earth. This is the Ball Earth Skeptic Roundtable, and we'll be spending a lot of our time today looking at some of the problems with the ball earth model. With all of that said, we'll throw it to you there, Matrix in Spain. Any points that you'd like to make on this problem with the moon and the sun both being in the sky at the same time?
Yeah, it is curious. I mean, a couple of nights ago, I was looking at viewing the moon in the sky here from Spain, and as it comes up in the sort of easterly sort of horizon, I'm following the moon across the whole of the sky throughout the night, and it didn't change its lighting or the shadow on it. I mean, it's almost a full moon, but its orientation didn't really change all the way across the sky, and a couple of hours earlier, the sun had set in the west, and the moon comes up in the east, and then like 6 to 7 or 8 hours later during the night, it's been like almost early morning, and the sun will be rising again. So the sun should have gone all the way around the other side of the planet, and it essentially eclipsed the moon. For me, it doesn't seem possible that we're on a spinning ball because of this, and the moon stayed the same all the way through the night, and I just find it hard to get my head around how it's possible on a ball Earth model. I think so. A lot of your 3D animations really help put that into perspective. So I'd just like to add that to the moon aspect.
Rory, anything you want to add?
Well, the issue is that we have to re-educate ourselves. It's as simple as that. And unfortunately, we're starting from scratch. And I don't have an issue. Somebody says to me, listen, they, through their understanding that the moon's a flat disk, well, I don't have a problem with it. If somebody says, listen, the moon is a projected image, well, then I'm going to start thinking, how do you project an eclipse? You have two light sources, and one light source is blocking out another light source. Not possible. So the moon must be a solid object of some sort. You with me? Make sense?
Yeah, I'm with you, mate. I should just say very quickly, I hate to interject there, that Google is telling us that we're down to 9 viewers. We were at 50, and a lot of the live chat is saying that the video's buffering, they're having problems. So look, guys, we apologise. We're not sure what the technical difficulties are there, but in the past when this has happened, it's taken a few minutes and then the videos come back. So please be patient. We're still here. We're still chatting, and we've got plenty more to talk about. What we'll do now is, because it's only a 2-hour show, we have to get through things relatively quickly. I want to move on now to a video that you uploaded back in February of this year, Rory. It's called Flat Earth in Plain Sight, and so far it's the most popular video that you've uploaded It's had about 30,000 views. Now, I took some notes on it. You spend a few minutes looking at the parallax problem of the moon, the sun, and the Earth, and then you spend a few minutes looking at planes and some issues to do with them. So what do you say? We'll look at the first 3 minutes of the video. I'll narrate it again. We'll come back at your thoughts, go through the roundtable, and then we'll look at the jet fighters aspect. How's that sound?
Yes.
All right, so we'll go to that right now. Again, I'll have to narrate this because there's audio, so please, listeners, I know that my voice can get a bit draining at times, but bear with me. This is Flat Earth in Plain Sight, uploaded February, and we'll watch the first few minutes now. This footage is filmed from a high-altitude balloon, and we're looking at the Earth supposedly being filmed from the high altitude.
You're not sharing video right now.
Okay, David, thank you for telling me that. Let's see. Present to everyone. All right, thank you, David. So we'll carry on then. So we've got footage. For those listening on audio, we're looking at an image from high altitude. It says, do you see the moon? Notice how it sways and moves with the Earth, which it clearly does. And then the video asks, why is that? So just to help you picture that for those listening on audio, it's...
I still don't see any video. I'm not sure if anyone else does.
I'm seeing it in the Google Hangout.
Oh, you are? Okay. I'm not seeing it for some reason. Go ahead, John. Sorry.
All right. So it says, firstly, are we seeing in this video the curve of the ball Earth? And then it overlays it against a standard 2D map of the Earth, if you like. And it says, no, this is filmed over Canada, and if we complete the circle and compare it to the size of Canada, what happens? Then the video, I guess, is making the point that the video footage itself, even if you believe it's a curve, it doesn't fit with the map that we're given. And you have to see the video for yourself to make sense of it. It says, if the sun is millions of kilometers away, how can it move and sway and keep in the same position with the Earth? So what we're talking about here is parallax. Now it says because the sun is above the Earth and not millions of kilometers away is the reason why it sways. So we're still looking at footage again from high altitude, supposedly of the ball Earth, and the video makes the point that the moon does the same thing. So both the moon and the sun appear to sway with the Earth from the camera's perspective. And this is very high altitude footage. It's well above the cloud cover. The video says, as the camera turns, the sun keeps its position with the Earth because it is in the vicinity of the Earth. And the camera does a full 360. And so that's a good little clip of it there. When we talk about the sun swaying with the Earth, the problem here is, and we'll have a discussion about this in a moment, if you imagine that you're on a train, then the trees that are going past you, nearer to you, appear to be moving faster than the trees in the distance. And this is what we call parallax. No one disputes that parallax is supposed to exist. The problem we've got here is that this camera angle, suppose the camera is, say, 20 kilometers up in the sky, for argument's sake, you know, it's not that far off the Earth. So the Earth is much closer than the sun. So we should be seeing the same effect in this camera footage as we see with the train. We should be seeing the Earth move and sway, but the sun hold its position because it's so far away, and yet this camera footage indicates that it doesn't do that. So where is the parallax? We'll carry on with the video. The world we live in is a fabricated, maintained illusion through the media and education indoctrination. And this is where Rory really comes into his own. He's now got a 3D representation of the sun and where it supposedly is, but where it appears to be. And again, you have to see this footage for yourself to make sense of it. It says, as the camera rocks and sways, the sun's position stays with the Earth because it is not millions of kilometers away. And this is brilliant. If you're struggling to get your head around some of the problems with ball Earth, this 3D modeling will help you to understand. Even if you don't agree with it, you'll at least understand where people like Rory are coming from. And if you're not willing to go and watch the footage, that's fine, but just don't pretend that you're willing to look at the other side, because this is as good a representation of the other side as you'll see. So as you can see here in his 3D programming, Rory's recreated the Earth swaying and the sun moving with it, which makes sense if the sun is close. But if the sun were far away, the sun would be holding its position, just like the trees in the distance on a train. Why does the sun behave like it's a nearby tree rather than a distant tree? And that tree analogy is mine, by the way. I'm not pinning that on Rory. He might disagree with the analogy. The video says, pay attention. If the Earth was a ball, the foreground would be higher, therefore shift faster than the background. Yep, that makes perfect sense as well. To me, anyhow, again... Sorry, you go, mate, you go.
Yeah, there's no change. There's no change, no shift in a parallax shift in the ground in front and the ground at the back. You see, objects further back on a ball can't move at the same speed. It will be exponentially faster. You with me? Because you're on a ball. Yet all that footage, the whole plane moves as a flat plane underneath you. You can see that it's flat. You know, what's happening is people see it, but mentally they don't see it. It's almost as if their brain is shut to it.
Well, what I'm doing right now is we'll get you to give us a bit more of an idea of this. I'm going to replay the section where you take the mountains and then the sun on a 360 circle above it, and then you draw the straight line between the sun where it should be and where it appears to be.
Yeah.
So I'll keep replaying this. If you want to spend a couple of minutes sort of going over this notion of the sun behaves as though it's a lot closer than 95 million miles.
Sure. And remember, keep in mind that where is the sun? It's on the horizon. That means it's 150 kilometers directly in front of you, because it's on the horizon in front of you. So how can, if the camera rotates, and then at the same time, if the camera is turning on its x-axis and it's spinning on its x-axis, the sun then can't rotate with the Earth on that x-axis. So your camera can rotate on its y-axis. In other words, it's going to pan from left to right. If the sun is 150 million kilometers away, it can't move at the same speed. In other words, it should be blurry because it's moving at millions of kilometers a second. In fact, your shutter speed of your camera, if you're going to set the shutter speed to 250 frames a second, you'll never capture that motion. The sun will just disappear because your camera cannot capture that speed. So I didn't mention those issues in that clip, but you can go a lot deeper into it. So objects in 3D space can't move together as you're filming them because they're at different depths from you. So with that clip, I just simply try to point out the fact I did a sun and look at the hotspot. They can't move in relation to each other. They can't move fixed in space if the one is 150 million kilometers back.
Yeah, and that's the problem, isn't it? That in this footage from up above, let's say that camera, I mean, a plane flies at, 30,000 feet? What's that, close to 10 kilometers? Let's say that camera was 20 kilometers up, right, for argument's sake. That is so much closer to the Earth than it is to the sun. It's not funny. The sun is many orders of magnitude further away, and yet the sun seems to sway as though it's not much further away than the Earth at all. In fact, if anything, it appears to be above the Earth in the foreground. And so what do you think of my analogy, Rory, where I talk about the trees on the train? We should be seeing, like on a train, we'll see the nearby trees moving very quickly. We'll see the distant trees not moving very quickly at all. And yet in this footage, it's the equivalent of seeing the distant trees moving at the speed of the near-ground trees. It doesn't make sense.
Exactly. Unless, of course, the trees at the back are closer. In the case of the sun, at the back isn't 95, 150. I've got to keep switching between miles and kilometers. So between 150 million kilometers. It's just ridiculous. I mean, it's just, look at that footage, and if people just look at it and look at the light, it's obvious. The sun is just above the clouds. And it's on the horizon from the perspective of the camera.
Yeah, so what we'll do is I'll just read out what parallax is according to our friends there at Wiki. Then we'll go around the round table to discuss this one. Basically, parallax, for those who aren't aware, is a displacement or difference in the apparent position of an object viewed along two different lines of sight and is measured by the angle or semi-angle of inclination between those two lines. The term is derived from the ancient Greek word meaning alteration. Nearby objects have a larger parallax than more distant objects when observed from different positions. So parallax can be used to determine distances. So once again, the nearby trees to the train will have a greater parallax than the distant trees. It's a very simple concept, and yet it seems to be one that's lost on many people. What we'll do is we'll go around the round table. It is a round table show, and if you've just joined us late, we've got 50 viewers watching us live. This is, of course, Baller Skeptic round table episode number 4, and we're fortunate enough to have with us today Rory of My Perspective, coming to us live from South Africa, but he's on Skype, so forgive us if the audio is a little bit quieter than normal. We'll go to you first there, Matrix Decode in Spain. This concept of parallax, it's one that I don't hear the debunkers trying to touch very often, and maybe there's a good reason for that.
Yeah, I mean, I come across this concept of parallax when investigating the moon landings, the Apollo moon landings, and where you can clearly see how some photographs don't match up to others, and how the perspective of the mountains in the distance and compared to the foreground are not as they should be, and this point about how Roy illustrates in his video about how the sun should be behaving in a similar fashion, really, it's powerful stuff, I think. So yeah, I mean, parallax. I mean, it's and the moon landings. I mean, and Apollo missions. I wonder what Rory's thoughts are on that and parallax.
Yeah. Well, it's as you said. In the images, there's no depth. There's no horizon in a lot of the Apollo images. So they've got Apollo 16 images, and Apollo 11, the moon landing. I think it was Apollo 11 was the one where the first time they landed on the moon. Is that right? I can't remember. But those their perspective in a lot of those images. I was going to do a clip where if you look at how they changed their angle in I can't remember which Apollo landing or clip it was, the images. So NASA sent out a whole lot of images, they're all labeled in their missions, and the mountains are at the same angle. Yet you see, I take a photograph. I'm always in the middle where the photograph was. My position isn't left of the photograph or right. So if I take a photograph, the shadow of my feet can't come out from the left side. It's impossible. My feet will be in the middle. So a lot of those images you'll see like shadows of the photographer coming out at the right. That's not possible. It's so, some of the stuff is so stupid. They're so blatantly, obviously fake. And yet people believe it, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and the lighting issues, the problems with the lighting, the angles of lighting on the moon photos.
That's not really the issue so much, because they're saying is that on a hill, or if there's different levels, if the terrain is quite bumpy, the shadows will also go down, which is true. So the shadow angles can be different angles. But the issue is sizes. You see, it's the size of the limb and the size of the mountains. And the angles of the mountains are always at the same angle, even though the photographer is standing on the opposite side of the limb. The mountains are maybe moved over to the left or to the right, but they're the same angle as it was when he's at 45 degrees from the limb on the other side. That's physically possible. So it's issues like that stand out. And you know what? You have to spend a bit of time looking at them. And as far as I'm concerned, it's just NASA's is a waste of time. They should go to jail, really. They should be in prison, a lot of them.
Well, I'll tell you what, I know that you've got a few videos that deal with NASA, Rory. I was hoping to come and deal with those a little bit later in the show. We were earlier on joined by David Weiss. He's had to leave us, so it's just the three of us in the Google Hangout plus our guest, Rory. We'll go to you there, Dave, allegedly Dave there in Britain. do you have any points to add to this topic about parallax and the apparent lack of parallax with the sun and the moon?
Well, it's kind of obvious why people haven't really gone for attacking the parallax issue. It's because it's one of those phenomena that we can see in everyday life, as you explained with the trees. You know, you can step outside your door and observe it. You know, just by walking along the street. You know, you can see the bushes near you going past you very quickly, but the things in the foreground, in the background, hardly moving. You know, it's something you cannot argue with. And to see the footage of those weather balloons, and this footage is not put out by NASA, because obviously NASA is not going to put anything out like that. But this is ordinary people or school kids, or ordinary groups that aren't controlled by NASA, sending up iPhones or cameras on weather balloons, and this phenomena is obvious. I also have to mention that Rory mentioned earlier that when you see things moving towards you, things in the far distance will move very slow until it gets close to you. Then it will move faster. It's the same issue. If you look at the footage from the ISS, this is one of the mistakes they make, because if you look at the Earth spinning below the ISS, you'll find that the far distance moves at the same speed as the foreground. So it's obviously fake.
That's it. You see, the point is also, if you're driving down the road and there's a vehicle coming towards you on your right, and you're going to overtake the vehicle, you'll see the back of the vehicle, and as you approach the vehicle, you'll see the side, and as you drive past, you'll see the front of the vehicle.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And same with the clouds. In their footage, the clouds are always at the same angle. They just come towards you, and they don't turn. They stay at the same angle, so it's fake. If I'm driving down a road and I'm approaching a crossroad, well, the crossroad's at an angle. So as I get closer to the crossroads, I can see more down to the left and right of me down the crossroad. And then when I'm in line with the crossroad, I can see left and right, and I can see down the middle. Now, their footage, there's no separation of space, either in the background or in the foreground. So it's fake.
Yeah.
You can't fake perspective. You can't fake parallax movement, because they'd have to animate obviously every cloud. And right. They're messing up the easy stuff. How are they going to get on with the difficult stuff?
Yep. The thing is, we've essentially been hypnotized, basically. Hypnosis basically programs our subconscious so that when the information comes in, it gets routed to a particular pigeonhole, and that pigeonhole is, obviously it's around Earth. But when you stop and look at this footage with, try and step back from it, I mean, I can't look at any of the ISS footage now without absolutely seeing the projection on the top or the bottom of a huge tank of water. It looks so obvious now. And for those points that you raised, that you can't see any kind of 3D image or 3D parallaxing on the actual surface features. So yeah, it is stepping outside of your programming, your hypnosis, to be able to actually see reality, as you said earlier, from an artist's view. I used to be an artist as well. The artist's view of actually seeing what you're looking at, rather than going with what you imagine is there.
Yeah. Somebody put up a clip of these guys from NASA that were doing some moonwalk and doing some repairs on the shuttle. And so you see the curve of the Earth behind the guy doing the moonwalk, but yet you see the reflection of that in his visor. And the visor's curved, it's round. How can an object on your left-hand side reflect on the opposite side of your round visor. Stuff like that's simple. You know, I looked at that clip within a few seconds and I had to laugh because as the guy moves the camera, what they've done is they've just done some motion tracking, marker motion tracking, and they've tracked the reflection onto the guy's visor. So as for example, if you look at somebody who's got a pair of glasses on, as the guy moves his head, the reflection doesn't stay with the guy's head because it's fixed. So the guy moves his head, the reflection stays in the same position. But they've got it back to front. I mean, I thought the guys at NASA were supposed to be like clever people, you know?
Yeah, well, they're clever in one way, but not in. This is a thing, and this is probably not going to be a popular view, but when people are highly educated, what they tend to lose is common sense. So yeah, they're really highly educated in stellar mathematics and whatever, but you know, making schoolboy mistakes like showing the Earth the size of the sun, so the size of the moon, you know, from the moon.
Yes.
That's a schoolboy mistake.
Yes, it's simple stuff that you know that when you look at it, you just know, you can see this is not right.
Well, I'll tell you what, guys, I can see that everybody's keen to talk about the ISS, and I did have a bit of a structure that I wanted to go through today, but we can jump ahead. What I've done is I've organised the screen share, the video that you did. This one's called, Rory, the flat Earth and the dung beetle. So what I've done is I've fast-forwarded, because that video has a few topics in it. I've fast-forwarded to where you address the problem of no gravity in the ISS, and yet they still behave like there's gravity. So what I'll do is I'll play the 3-minute clip, I'll narrate it again, then I'll shut up, I'll replay the clip on loop, and then we can get your thoughts on it. Then we'll go around the round table. How's that sound?
Sure.
So the flat Earth and the dung beetle, and this one is from February 22 of this year, and I'll just make sure that everyone can see that. That should be presenting to everyone. Let me know if it's not.
Yeah, got it.
So it says, unless... Okay, so the Earth is... Rory has this habit of mocking the ball earthers, and he loves his dung beetles. And if you haven't been to South Africa, you wouldn't know that they have massive dung beetles over there. They've got their own little species of massive dung beetles. So that's probably where Rory's fascination with them comes from. Anyway, this one is called The Gravity of Balance, and it's looking at the International Space Station. And again, I strongly encourage you, whether you're a ball earther, a flat earther, a concave earther, or a skeptic, an agnostic earther like myself, I recommend you go and check out Rory's videos. I'll link to all of the ones that we look at today in the info box underneath this video on YouTube. So right now on the video, on the clip, we've got a man on a unicycle trying to balance, and the video says in space you have no gravity or center of gravity, so you can't fall over or have the sensation of falling.
I think it's just like any other place,
and one of the ISS astronauts just said that it's just like any other place on Earth. And Rory's sort of overlaid some comical music. I'll shut up now. And we've got one of those astronauts, she's doing that interview, I think it was with the Ellen DeGeneres show or something like this, and she's sitting there and all of a sudden she just starts floating, which should be physically impossible in space. And she's doing that, I would infer, because she's on a zero-G plane. She just suddenly starts floating upwards.
Yeah, all of a sudden.
exercise 2 hours a day, but being that you have no gravity, how do you exercise in space?
So she's been asked, how do you exercise in space?
You know, it's a great question, and we have a weightlifting machine which works on the principle of vacuum. Like, I'm not really lifting weights, but I'm pulling against something that's pulling on a vacuum, and so it's really hard. Like, you know,
if you are weightless, you will only pull yourself toward the thing that's pulling on a vacuum thing. As you are weightless, it is pointless. You would have to strap your entire body to a harness.
We have a treadmill that I wear a harness, and it holds me down on the treadmill. And I have to say that it was really interesting
You have no weight in space, so you cannot displace your weight forward. By running, you will be continually forced downward like weightless cheese into a cheese grater. And then she just starts floating upwards. It's so ridiculous.
Wow.
How can her hair always... Or do you need some more hairspray? Look, I'm going to pause it there. Rory, this is the thing for me. It took me a little while to break through the cognitive dissonance. I don't know if it was a couple of weeks, but to go from thinking, okay, maybe the ISS is fake, but maybe there's a logical explanation for all of this, to realizing, no, this is a complete and utter fraud. And once you get through that cognitive dissonance, this really is a circus. It's absurd.
It's sad. It's actually sadly pathetic. And people believe it. I mean, look at her hair. How on earth, you know, in that clip, the original clip that NASA uploaded, she's spinning around, but her hair is always facing the same angle. So when she's upside down, her hair's pointing down, and when she's the right way up towards the camera, her hair's pointing up, and it doesn't move. And watch how she turns her head. All her hair stays like in one ball. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, if you think about it, if you're in space, what's the point of running on a treadmill? There's going to be you're going to be forced downwards, and you can't displace that weight because the harness is keeping you in the same position. It's crazy. I mean, just think about it logically. It's stupid. It's like you know, it's like fairy tales for adults, but stupid adults.
Can you tell me, Rory? Do you remember when you first realized that the ISS was a hoax? Do you remember roughly when that was, and what you saw that prompted you to realize this?
I can't actually put my finger on it, but you know, I think it's like the whole world, the whole system, and what you're getting fed is mindless garbage. You know, your perceptions are being controlled and manipulated. That's all it is, and they're using the media for it. And as soon as you realize that, I think the issue for me is that the First World War, and you know, in Africa, I grew up and I went to war, and I fought in Angola, and I was as an instructor in the military, and I taught people how to kill and shoot. And when I was there, I just realized, man, something is just horribly wrong, because this is bad, man. We're not the good guys. They're not the good guys. We're just two bad guy armies killing the people in the middle, the innocent people in the middle. And that was the beginning of me questioning things and saying, wow, man, something is just so wrong. You know, the history that you get taught is just, for example, you know, I don't want to go off the subject, but you get taught at school that the Second World War started because Germany invaded Poland. Yeah, but so did Russia. And they invaded at the same time, and they stopped at Warsaw and divided Warsaw. Well, that tells you that Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin planned the thing in the beginning. And it's logical. They won't tell you that at school. So Adolf Hitler and Stalin, and when Germany attacked Russia, they killed about 2 million Russians. What did Stalin do? He went and killed 20 million Russians. I mean, that's mind-blowing. And he's viewed as a hero. I mean, for goodness sake, when will people wake up and say, this is just, how many more people must die? How much more garbage must we eat? How much more of this rubbish? And they're killing us, they're robbing us, and we must just sit down like stupid cattle. When are we going to just say, look, you know, I mean, what will it take for people to wake up and say, no, it's enough of this. Stop giving NASA money. Take them to court. I mean, 9/11, what a flippin', it's disgusting. You know, when you in 9/11, the video image, you see an airplane flying into a window. That's not possible. An airplane can't fly into concrete and steel and then explode inside the building. The airplane will explode outside the building. You know, if I drive my car through my garage door, I can't drive my car through the garage door and then my car crashes inside the garage. I'll crash outside. And people don't question this, you know. I mean, it's how much more of this garbage do we have to take before we say, you know, it's enough. I mean, when NASA has a big thing, I don't even watch. I just laugh at them. But, you know, we've got to just say, listen, man, we've been lied to for so long about everything. When are they going to at least give us some truth? Now, people are delusional and they think that they're going to tell you the truth, that they're going to educate you. Sure, they teach you how to read and write, which is a good thing. But the rest of it is just, it's propaganda that's passed off as an education. So you become this mindless robot that just comes and does your job, and then you get a salary, and you go home, and then you die, and then, you know, and then people are stupid enough to believe that when you die, you're going to go to heaven. Really? You're going to go live in a paradise somewhere in heaven? It's crazy.
Well, I tell you what, you are the special guest, so I don't mind you taking us a little bit tangential there. Let me read out the description on your YouTube channel. I'll read this out verbatim. I decided to change my whole perspective of my blog, moving forward to create content that won't cause division by challenging the system, but simply make people think and appreciate the real world we live in. This is very important to me as I don't want to become part of the problem and confusion, so the only way I can peacefully accomplish this is to do it purely from my personal perspective as an artist, and then let the viewer decide. During the apartheid era, I was imprisoned because I refused to comply to the then South African government, but I also refused to be viewed as a political dissident because my decision was based on my conscience and I did not belong to any political party because they are all corrupt. This is the same principle. So I guess we might as well move on to one of the topics I was hoping to talk about today, Rory, which is the fact that in your videos, you oftentimes end a video, say you spend the last 2 or 3 minutes dealing with more abstract or esoteric concepts, the idea that there are genuinely evil people running the show, that you know, you don't use the word satanic, but you do make references to the Catholic Church and to Rome. Do you want to give us a basic idea of who you think is really responsible for hiding the real shape of the earth and who you think is responsible for all of the misery that we see on the earth today?
Well, it's organized. We have to go a bit back into history. If you go back into when the Babylonian were the world power, you know, the Syro-Babylonian system. So throughout history, philosophy and science, math, have always gone hand in hand. And if you follow that line, you'll get down to, you know, Plato, Aristotle. You know, Aristotle was the tutor of Alexander the Great. And all the successive world powers were all controlled. So what we've been taught is Greek philosophy. Science is Greek philosophy. If you go look in the books, for example, Galileo, I'll tell you, he's a philosopher, mathematician. You go look at Aristotle, philosopher, mathematician. Physics, metaphysics, mathematics, all these things combined. In other words, they have a philosophy and they use math to back the philosophy. It's still today. You know, Aristotle wrote a book, History of Animals. And Darwin just expanded on it, Origin of the Species. So it's that line, you know, you follow that philosophical line, and you see that it's the same organization. You know, the Freemasons is basically what it is. You know, Freemasonry, they run the world, they run the system, their philosophy and their maths is what controls the system we live in. They control the education system. But right on top of them is the Vatican. People think that the Roman Empire just disintegrated. No, it didn't. Rome still rules the world. And sure, you have your kings. But when Rome was ruling the world back in those days, you select your kings and your queens? Just said Rome ruled over them. So the Vatican and the Jesuits, the research that I've done shows that they rule the system, and Freemasonry is the mechanism, the mechanics that get there. It's the mechanics in what accomplishes what they want to accomplish. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And like I said, in your videos, I noticed that you'll spend the first third or the first two-thirds addressing one problem with the ball earth theory, whether it has to do with parallax or the face of the moon, or other aspects like this, or the ships with perspective over the sea, these kinds of things. But you tend to finish by speaking a little bit more broadly about the problems of the earth. Is that something that you do intentionally when you make the videos, to draw people in with the problems of the ball and then finish off with something bigger, or does that just happen organically?
Yes, because you see, does it matter if the earth is flat or round? Some people will say, well, what's the difference? What do they mean? Well, they're saying we're enslaved. I'm enslaved on a ball, I'm enslaved on a flat plane. What difference does it make? And essentially, they're correct. The point is that a person who understands his surroundings is in a bit of a better position to make better choices, make better decisions in your life. Don't become just a cattle that you just wander off with the rest because they're killing the cattle. That's the point. They're using these cattle to kill those cattle. And they're robbing and fleecing everybody. So at least if you're awake, if you're alert to this fact and you start questioning, don't just believe. Now they've got vaccines and they've got a whole medical industry that is for cancer, and now they're predicting that in London alone, that within the next 10 years, 50% of the population, one out of 2 people will have cancer. How can you predict something like that unless you're making it happen? I mean, it's sick. They're making more money. All the diseases that we see got to come from somewhere. They'll tell you that this disease came because this virus jumped from that animal to that animal. But yet in the past, they'll tell you that it's impossible for viruses to do that without human intervention. So somebody's doing this deliberately. World War I, they slaughtered millions. World War II, they slaughtered millions. The Spanish flu, it just goes on and on and on. And most people feel, well, I'm okay. When it gets to my door, I'll worry about it. Well, the point is, it's at your door. And, what difference does it make? Well, to me, it makes a big difference. Because I'm looking and I'm appreciating the earth that I live on. It's like if somebody gave you, if you went to somebody's house and they cooked you a nice meal, after the meal, you say, thanks very much. And they ask you, so what did you like? Or what did we have for the meal? Well, we had potatoes and carrots. Oh, I didn't notice. Well, then how much of the meal did you really appreciate? So, from my perspective, I see, the things I see with my eyes. I see the birds, I see the fish. These are all amazing things. And I appreciate them. I see the sun. Sunlight is an amazing thing. We get taught that the sun is just a ball of fire. What a load of rubbish. That a whole lot of explosions that are happening 150 million kilometers away, yet we don't see a flicker. In your whole life, have you ever seen the sun flicker? Never. Nobody's ever seen the sun flicker. And if you light a fire, the light from fire is different. You can light the biggest fire you want to, and you put a person in front of that fire. The light from the fire is not going to light his back, but the sunlight will. If the sun rises in the east, you go to your house to the opposite side and open up a window facing west, and you open the curtains. That sunlight comes in. It's almost like the sunlight's making the air glow. It's amazing. And the birds, it's just amazing. We just don't appreciate it because we've just been blinded by it's a ball and everything's a ball and everything just creates itself. And so it's okay to go and kill somebody. It's okay to be, they're trying to make us, in one instance, we're like gods, but yet we die and suffer like cattle. I mean, it's a bizarre mindset. Why do we listen to these people? You know, I'm not saying be rebellious, not at all. I'm saying listen to the law. You know, obey the rules of the road. Get your driver's license. Don't drink and drive. Do these things. But for goodness sake, stop bowing down to these people and stop kissing their boots. Don't nod your head when they lie to you. Don't accept it. They're lying to people. They're deceiving everybody. They're slaughtering us like cattle. They're spraying us like cattle. I mean, when are we going to wake up? What will it take for people to say, you know what, I'm being exploited to the ultimate degree? That's how bad it's got. You know, for them, it's absolute control at any cost. They want absolute control at any cost. Doesn't matter how many people they kill. Doesn't matter how many people they hurt. We are in a sad state. You know, when people don't see it, they're like a leper who walks around in a tuxedo thinking that the world's okay. It's not okay. Sorry, I'm going off on a bit of a...
No, I'm so glad that you did. Let me tell you this, Rory, in a live chat, we've got more than 50 people watching live, and I think many of them appreciate that we've given you some time to speak your mind, and I think a lot of people don't realise that. I mean, we're brought up to believe that flat earthers are crazy people, and they're usually religious nutters. That's what we're trained to believe. Oh, if they believe the earth is flat, they're a religious nutter. They're one of those people who's angry at the heathens. But the more I listen to people who identify with flat earth, the more I listen to people who question the ball earth, I notice there's a common theme, and it seems to be people who can see the problems around them and don't have too much of a hard time believing that whichever scum or evil is responsible for the wars that we see and the cancers that we see and all of the problems that we see with financial enslavement, it's not hard for you or for me to see, hey, if they could do that to us, they could do anything to us. And if we're dumb enough to fall for the International Space Station, we'd be dumb enough to fall for a spinning ball. I mean, I wouldn't put anything past the evil who run the show. And when I listen to people like you, Rory, I can hear a real empathy for your fellow man. And that's what I'm finding time and time again. People who are flat earthers, they're not crazy, they're not angry, they're not religious zealots. They're people who truly care about those around them, and they're questioning what is the earth that we're standing on. I could ask you a million questions based on what you just said, but it wouldn't be fair of me. This is a roundtable. So I'll throw to Ben first there. Any questions or comments on the last 5 or 10 minutes worth of Rory's thoughts?
Yeah, well, it's great to hear Rory, express himself like that and so eloquently, he clearly sees like the bigger picture of what's going on here, and how the deception's been employed upon humanity. He talks about like the Freemasons and the Catholic Church, and that also means like Jesuits and so on. And so much of science has been put forth by the Catholic Church and people like George Lemaitre, who came up with the idea of the Big Bang. I wonder what if Roy could elaborate more on subjects like evolution and the Big Bang, and theories like gravity, and his opinions on those things.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on gravity? I mean, do you like many other flat earthers think it's just density?
Well, yeah, I think it's density plays a big part in it. But how it works, I wish I knew. I wish I knew the truth. I've pondered this thing for many, many years, and I wish I knew. I've got no clue. And then people ask me, well, if the Earth's flat, what's underneath? I don't know. What's on the sides? Well, there's a wall. If there's a dome, what looks like there's a dome, what's it made of? I don't know. What's what's outside that dome is I get some idea from Genesis says it's water. Other than that, I don't know. But what I do know is what I can see with my eyes and what my mind tells me, and that we're living on a flat plane. And that is that. It's as simple as that. You can see it with your eyes. The arguments that they use to tell you that the Earth's a ball are so weak in themselves. Like I said, it's a display model. As soon as you pick it up and you see how it works, and you realize it actually doesn't work. It's just a display model.
Yeah, I agree. Dave?
Okay. I just want a little quick dalliance. Go back to what Rory was saying about the harness on the treadmill. It just occurred to me when you were describing that if that person's got a harness on, pulling them down towards the treadmill, as soon as they started running and both feet left the ground, they'd be pulled straight down into the treadmill. They wouldn't be able to run on that thing.
Exactly.
So,
that's the point. Because your motion isn't going to send you forward. You're getting pulled down.
Yeah, so you trip up on the first step.
It's so stupid. Yeah. It might make sense when they're talking to you, but when you think about it, you say, "Oh, wait a minute, that's not right." It's like everything. It's like the news. They tell you stuff and you say, "Wait, that's not right."
Exactly. It's like they give us a Disney version of reality, and because we've been trained to suspend disbelief when we watch, official channels, we take it as reality. But if you have a close look at it, this was the first time I'd actually looked at them running on a treadmill with a harness, and because I took a close look at it, it was like, oh, obviously it's not going to work, But unless you do that, you don't see it.
Yeah, and you know what? They want you to believe that we aren't clever enough to understand it, but you are. The Creator's given us a brain, He's given us eyes. We must use them. What's happening is
the problem is that they keep us busy with busyness, and they keep us occupied with an occupation. So we're too tired to look at anything that is outside of our very small sphere of experience. So most people will never ever look at it unless they're forced to, or something appears that sort of gives them that aha moment. And that's our job, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, so sorry, I'm going off topic here.
Amazes me.
Yeah, I'm going off topic here. The thing I was wanting to say was is you were talking about the why, and you also sort of briefly mentioned about who's behind all this. Now I've got a different perspective from you. I was a complete atheist. Total atheist before I started on my journey 10 years ago, but this experience with the flat Earth has actually made me made me know there is a creator, and we are his creation. Now, as for the why of this, you can't look at the ball Earth in isolation. Right? You have to look at it in respect of the evolution theory that goes along with it, and the Big Bang. Okay, they're all connected, all there to make you as a human feel that you're worthless. There's no plan. There was no creation. There's no purpose to your life. So because of that, if you feel that way, then you can be controlled. Then it doesn't matter if you kill somebody or if you kill an animal. It doesn't matter because there's no purpose behind it. So if people all believe that, then anything goes. And as far as who's at the top, well, this whole experience has made me. It's made me look at the Bible for the first time, and not the book of fairy tales that the Roman Catholic Church puts out, but if you look at the King James Version 1611 and you cross-reference it with the books of the Apocrypha and the Book of Enoch, Jubilees, Jasher, and Testament of Solomon, you get a complete picture. And one of the questions I was asking when I was in the free man movement was, you know, and the conspiracy theory movement, I was asking, well, who's at the top of the pyramid? And at that time, the only thing I could come up with was it had to be something non-human at the top of the pyramid, and something non-human and not affected by linear time. Now, after this experience reading the Bible and stuff, I now know who that being is, and it's you know, it might not be popular, but it's Satan, because our whole society is satanic, and it's been sort of created that way by leaders, and these leaders all do these satanic rituals. And what are these rituals? They're invoking these spirits and talking to beings on the other, so in some other realm, some other dimension, which you know, which is giving them information and knowledge to be able to control the rest of us and do all these atrocities on us. So I know you. Sorry.
Yeah, no, carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying. I know you've kind of shied away from the religious aspect, and what I feel is not religion, because I've shied away. I shy away from religion as well, but I have a personal knowledge now that the story from the Bible, which has been corrupted and fed to us by again agents of Satan in the Vatican, and you know, this story is real and it's playing out right now. That's why all these atrocities are happening, because this is a satanic world. Satan is in charge at the moment.
Yeah, you know, don't you find it interesting that if you look at all the scientific accomplishments that humans that we're supposed to have made, going into space, and these are scientists, and scientists will say, well, we don't believe in God, but yet they'll call the rocket Apollo. The Roman
yes.
And
but this is.
Yeah,
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I don't
believe in God. What they're saying is we don't believe in the Creator, but we got the gods that we support. And obviously, it's Saturn, Satan, Jupiter, Mars, and Venus, and these are just Roman gods. So they do believe in the gods, just not, they don't support the Creator. So the Bible in itself, my personal belief is that it's inspired, and I've read through it from cover to cover. And what most people think that the Bible says is what's being fed to them is Greek philosophy, mixed with some scriptures. But when people read the Bible and you actually stop and meditate what the Bible says, and you for example, people say, well, the God Jehovah of the Hebrews was a cruel God. I didn't see that. I've read through the Bible, and like, for example, when Jehovah said to King Solomon, in a dream, what do you want? What do you, because you're king, what do you want? And he said, well, I want wisdom and discernment and understanding. The Bible says this was pleasing to God. But then Jehovah says to him, because you didn't ask for the death and the suffering of your enemies, I will give you this. And it shows you there's a creator who isn't vindictive, who isn't corrupted, who isn't bad, or isn't wicked and just wants to hurt people. And throughout, if you even, you get to understand the creator as a person if you read the Bible. For example, in Jacob, with Rachel and Leah. The Bible said Jacob loved Rachel and Leah. And if you read Leah's thoughts, and how she cried because she felt unloved, and the Bible says that God gave her children. And yet, he didn't give any children to Rachel. Then eventually, the Bible says that Rachel fell pregnant and gave birth. And then when you hear what she says, you understand why. because she says, at last, now I've also got offspring, so I'm in competition with my sister. Now I'm just as good as I'm how did she say it? Read the account, it's actually quite interesting. It shows you that her whole life, she was actually in competition with her sister. And she waited for children, and when she finally got children, she didn't say, oh, here's somebody to love and appreciate, and somebody that I can nurture and look after. For her, it was a trophy. Now you understand why the Creator withheld his blessings. So what I'm saying to you is, look, read your Bible and meditate about it, because there's many lessons that you learn in there. Many. I mean, I'd encourage anybody, no matter who you are, if you read the Bible and you think about what it says, you'll benefit from it. But don't confuse the Bible with organized religion.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll have to interject there, Rory. Let me ask you a few questions from the live chat, because we are coming towards the back part of the show. Sure. But before I do, you're talking about scripture there in the Bible. Can I ask you just a couple of quick questions? Firstly, do you take the Bible literally?
Yes. But if you say to me, was the earth created in 6 days? I don't think so, because we're still living in the seventh day. So if we're living in the seventh day, and the seventh day has been longer than 7,000 years, then all the other days must also be longer than 7,000.
Was there a period where you simultaneously believed in the Bible but also the spinning ball, or have you really always been a flat earther, from what you read?
No, I read the Bible and I just went along with science, and science says it was a spinning ball. And it's been a slow journey for me. Your knowledge and your understanding, it grows. But for me, ultimately, is that my hope and my desire is to get to know the Creator. That's my whole life. I mean, for me, what's the point? I live and I breathe and I eat and I exist because the Creator gave me life. So why should I walk around and ignore who this Creator is? It's an opportunity for me to go to the Creator and say, well, teach me. Teach me about your creation. Teach me, what can I learn? I mean, there must be many things. And of course, for most people, they'll laugh at me and say I'm an idiot. But the Creator is a person. It's got a personality. Has likes, has dislikes. And he loves human beings. And there's an issue between the Creator, Jehovah, and Satan. And Jesus plays a huge part in settling the dispute with Satan. And I believe what the Bible says, that soon Jesus is going to return to the earth. He's going to remove Satan's whole system, the Vatican. He's going to use the United Nations to wipe out religion and the Vatican. And then the political system is going to be wiped out. And the prophet Daniel says so. And I believe that, yeah. Absolutely.
All right, then just a couple more quick questions then. If it's the case that the Roman Church never lost its power, or if it's the case that the Roman Catholics never lost power, or that Rome never fell, or, you can put it however you like, but if it's the case that the same people have been in charge for thousands of years, and yet the English version of the Bible only came out a few hundred years ago, why would they have allowed us access to a book that has truth in it? Like, if they're going to lie about the shape of the earth, why would they ever give us access to a book that has any truth in it?
Well, they didn't give you access to it. For example, William Tyndale. Well, they killed him. Michael Servetus, they roasted him alive for 5 hours until he died. So, Miles Coverdale, all the Bible translators, Franz Huss, you just look at all those Bible translators. They were murdered and cleaned off the face of the earth. So they had a Bible chained to every church, yeah. And it was in Latin, the Latin Vulgate version. But anybody who translated it into English, well, they were going to be persecuted. So they didn't want you to have the Bible. And they've done their best to hide it. So surely think for yourself, is God's hands cut short that he can't bypass these wicked people to make sure that you get a Bible? So some people will argue and say, well, the King James Version is the only right version. I don't have an issue with Bible translations, as long as the thoughts are the same. And I'm not going to fight about words and the meaning of little words and actually miss the point. the Bible is there, and I mean the Bible's in Zulu, it's in Xhosa, in Sesotho, in many languages. Everybody can get a copy of the Bible, and you can get it for nothing, for very little money. How's it possible? So as far as I'm concerned, I think that the Creator's hands in it to make sure that it's up to you to think about it, to make an effort to read it, and if you ask Jehovah for help to understand it, He's going to give it to you. As Jesus said, if you ask God for a fish, He's not going to give you a scorpion. He'll help you understand. And I absolutely believe that. I mean, many of the things that I understand that I see around me, it's not because I'm more intelligent than the guy next to me. I pray to Jehovah about it. I say, I don't understand this. How does this work out? How does this sound? I don't understand. How does this work? Then over a period of time, I look and think, and then I understand it better. But how the whole system works, well, I don't know.
All right, then. Well, one more question on Scripture from me, Rory. Just quickly, we've got more than 60 people watching live. I appreciate everyone for coming out. There's one or two people in the chat who don't seem terribly keen on this discussion about Scripture. And there's been one comment, and that doesn't bother me, by the way. I want to respond to them. I understand that for some people, they've already decided that Scripture is wrong, or that it's here. Like, they've already decided that, and they don't want to hear it anymore. And in a way, I understand that. But at the same time, I think to myself, you can turn on a TV any day of the week and essentially get given the words of Satan. Now, you might not believe in Satan. You might believe that it's this group or that group running the world. But we can all agree the people who control the television sets that you can tune into any time, they're the enemy. Whether they're the devil, whether they're Satan, whether they're evil, you can use whatever term you like. Most sane people can agree that that message is out there 24/7. My logic is, if I have a guest on the show who wants to discuss the reasons why he doesn't believe the spinning ball, who wants to discuss the reasons why he believes flat earth, and he has his own reasons for believing that, he puts hours into making his videos. If he also wants to spend 15 minutes discussing Scripture on the show, I don't have a problem with that, and I do have the patience to sit and listen, even if I don't believe in Scripture. And it amazes me how many people think that they're awake and they're so smart and so intelligent, but they can't listen to someone they disagree with about something for 15 minutes. It's such a struggle for them to have to sit and listen for 15 minutes on a topic they don't agree on. It really amazes me. But one more question. You go, Rory.
Sorry, John, but do you blame them?
Oh, I mean, we've all got our own biases, Rory. I mean, that's.
I don't blame people for hating the Bible, for hating the system.
Yeah,
it's because it's the people who are controlling the system, the Vatican and the Jesuits. They've given this appearance of being holy and being the representatives of the Creator, but they're the representatives of Satan. Just as you said. And so I feel sorry for people who just say, look, I don't want to hear about the Bible. And people who just, their life experience has been so bad that they just say, look, there is no good thing. There can't be a God because the system is so bad. I feel sorry for them. And I can relate to them because I hate it just as much as they hate it. But there's a difference is that, I can see when I read the Bible that, listen, this book is different. This book is really, really different. Sorry.
No, you're fine. And that's the thing. I mean, for me, this whole process is one of deprogramming. I have been programmed since the day I was old enough to listen to people speak nonsense, especially since I started going to school and watching TV. I've been programmed. And it's not one layer of programming. It's not 10. It's not even 100. It's an untold number, perhaps tens of thousands of levels of programming that have been put into my mind that I'm now having to undo. And it's not an easy process. And what I've found is that the more that I deprogram my biases and prejudices, the easier it is for me to sit here and listen to people talk about things on which I disagree with them. Because I think a lot of what the programming agenda does is it makes us biased and prejudiced against certain other people. And it's not simply that they make us biased and prejudiced against the people who have the truth. They just make us biased and prejudiced against all other belief systems, so that even if 2 or 3 or 5 of us all agree on some basic ideas like the spinning ball model doesn't work, or the people who run the show are evil, even if we agree on those things, if person A says, well, I use the Bible to guide me, person B has been programmed to say, the Bible? Well, that's crazy. I believe in science. And and then person B has been programmed to say, yeah, but don't you drive a nice car? And it just goes on, where we're looking for reasons to disagree with each other or stop listening to each other. And that's our biggest problem. At the basic heart of it, there's two groups of people, the evil scum who run the show and the rest of us. And every minute that I say, well, you believe in the Bible and I don't, so I'm not going to listen to you anymore, well, that's a minute that we're not working together. And for me, this is one of the basic truths. We should be looking for where we can agree rather than where we disagree. And one thing that you and I agree on is the spinning ball model doesn't work. And most of the people in our chat agree with that. But there's just a small handful of people who don't want to focus on these things that we can all agree on, that the curvature isn't there, that the idea of a vacuum connecting to an atmosphere doesn't make sense, that a plane shouldn't be able to fly east-west and west-east and take the same amount of time going either way. Like, these are things that we can agree on, and instead of us discussing these things, they want to focus on the things where we disagree, like Scripture. Do I believe in Scripture? No, I don't. But does that mean that I'm going to stop listening to you because you do? Of course not. How absurd is that? Now, I do have one more question for you, Rory, before we move on to the questions from the listeners. Just quickly, is it possible that the Bible has been put out there, whether it's in Latin or English or whatever, is it possible that that's been put out there so that good people like yourself who can see so much evil in the world turn to the Bible as hope? You hope that Jesus will come back, you hope for salvation, and you externalize the solution. Is it possible that they want you hoping for Jesus because in the meantime, in theory, you're doing less to organize an assault on evil yourself?
Yeah, I hear your point. Look, we both agree that the guys who run the system, the people with the power, the people with the money, they're not your friends. They're not going to do anything to help you or to alleviate your situation. They're going to make sure you're enslaved and you're enslaved for your entire life. They're going to spin you a rubbish story that when you die, you're going to go to heaven if you've been a good boy. That's basically, it's garbage. As towards the Bible, I've read it, and I haven't read it once. I've read it from cover to cover and thought about it, and the more I read it and the more I meditate on it, the more convinced I am that it contains the thoughts of our Creator. You know, what I see in the Bible and what I see with my eyes go hand in hand. In other words, I have evidence, visual evidence, what I see in the world, and when I read the Bible, it confirms it. So why would Satan then give you a book that gives you hope? You know, why would he do that? Why would he give you a book that actually exposes him and the demons and the people who rule this world as demonic? Why would he do that? Surely you'd want to remain hidden and hide behind the curtain, as they do. Doesn't make sense. So, you know, before you condemn something, you know, don't condemn the Bible. Read it. Look, my personal opinion is, my personal perspective and viewpoint is that the evidence I have is what I can see and what my mind tells me. So that's why in my video clips, I might mention a scripture once or twice, but generally I stay away from the Bible and I concentrate just on visual things. You know, things that I can see. For example, if the earth is curved and the ship goes up over the curve, then the clouds, you see them upside down because the clouds on the horizon, you can't see them on the side. They'd be upside down because they're also going over the curve. Why do people imagine the earth curves and the boat goes over the curve, but the cloud just goes straight ahead? How's that possible?
I'll tell you what we'll do, Rory. We are running out of time, so we'll move on to some of the questions from the live chat. I've got 4 in particular, so let's go through them briefly. Minion1 asks, does Rory have any idea why the sun is the same size regardless of its height in the sky? And I'm glad he asked that question because for me, this is one of the problems that I'm having getting my head around the flat Earth model. I'm convinced that the spinning ball has too many problems in it, and I'll be surprised if I ever believe in it again. Maybe I will, but at the moment it's not looking good. But I'm still not sold on the flat Earth theory, and this is one of the problems that I have with it. Why do you think the sun appears to be the same size at all times of the day?
Okay, well, it's perspective. So if you take a piece of paper and you draw a big circle on the piece of paper, that's the orbit, right, of the sun. Then you draw a ball on it. Now if you hold that paper up flat to your eye, and if that ball follows that arc, it will be the same size. Now, if you tilt it the ball will be bigger when it's by you, and as the ball gets further away, it'll get smaller. So, in other words, if I'm standing on the Earth, anything that's higher than me, as the plane gets higher and higher, it appears more flat. Do you understand?
Yep.
Does that make sense? So you seeing the arc from as if it was a flat surface in front of you. Look at the stars. You know, if you watch the stars orbit, it seems as if they're on a flat plane. So I believe that the stars are on a flat plane. The sun and the moon are orbiting underneath them, and there's a dome. I don't believe that the stars are actually attached to the dome itself. Doesn't appear that. But the stars are a flat plane. It's because of your angle. So if you take a flat piece of paper, level with your eye, right? You're looking at the paper from the side. As the paper gets higher and higher and higher, but you leave the bottom corner in the same place, for example. In other words, if I stand at a table level and my eyes are level with a table with a piece of paper, and I just lift the paper up, the bottom side of the paper stays flush with the table, then I see the arc flat on. In other words, the orbit of the sun would look like a round curve, and the sun would stay the same. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I probably should rephrase it, because for me, it's not so much the size of it. In the live chat, they have made a decent point that at different times of the day, the sun can appear different sizes. Like when it's about to set, it does look a little bit bigger. I guess for me, the issue is more with the disk model. There are some flat Earth models that have the moon and the sun as a disk, and my problem isn't so much the size; it's more the shape. It should be, if it's a disk, it should make an ellipse as it moves away from us, but they don't. The moon and the sun never appear to make an ellipse. They always appear to be circular. Now, that's a problem on some flat Earth models, but I don't think that's a problem on your model, because you say that they're spheres, that they're actual physical 3D spheres.
Yeah, I think they appear to be physical spheres. Because if you, the reason why I'm saying that is that if a person sees an eclipse, doesn't matter where your position on Earth, they have to be spheres for an eclipse to work on any position on Earth. So anywhere on Earth, when there is an eclipse, doesn't matter. So you won't see the eclipse from any position, but when it does occur in that area, you always see it as a two circles, and the one circle is overlapping the other circle. It has to be a ball. Do you understand what I'm saying? In other words, for you to view it, let's take a good example. The moon's a ball, and I can prove it to you right now. It's not a disk. Go look at the moon tonight. Okay, it's full moon. So wait a couple of days when it's quarter moon, eh? I'll go outside. It will be a quarter moon, and the light will be on the left. But in the north, it will be on the other side. But look at the pattern on the moon. We both see it the same, but at a different angle. So you're seeing the other side of the moon. How's it possible? It has to be a ball.
Well, that actually leads me to a question. I did go through some of your back catalogue over the last couple of days for today's show, and there was one thing that I wanted to ask you about. The video that we played earlier actually kind of touched on this. You're suggesting that, I mean, because most of us who've looked into this agree that the moon and the sun being in the sky at the same time doesn't make sense, at least so far as I can tell and so far as you can tell. But then you give a model of the sun, leading the moon, and so the moon reflecting light from the sun just at a much closer distance. Are you familiar with the work of people like Eric Dubai, who say that the moon isn't illuminated by the sun at all, that the moon is self-illuminating? What do you think about that idea?
Yeah, I listen to what they have to say because, first, John, I want to commend you for your attitude by saying, listen, we need to keep an open mind. Like, for example, Eric, he believes his orientation is towards Western philosophy. I don't have an issue with it. That's not going to divide me, and I'm not going to become like his enemy or view him as a bad person. Not at all. So I'm like you. I keep an open mind, and people have their own views. And the thing is, I respect them. I respect them for their views. The only issue is when people start mocking you because you say the Earth's flat. Well, then my standpoint is different. People need to respect other people's views. We are so quick to think, he's an idiot, he's an imbecile, he's a moron, because he doesn't see things the way I do. So what Eric has to say and what they said before, I've thought about it. And when you think about it, there are issues that don't seem to work. So for me, the reflections on the moon and the light and the shadows on the moon appear that it's a ball. In other words, I see the shadows of the craters. Personally, I think that the moon is probably made of ice. It's solid water, and it's reflecting the sun. To me, it looks like that. But the height of it alternates. So the moon keeps its same orbit, keeps the same speed, but it's at different heights. So you still see it arc, and that's why the angle of the sunlight towards it changes. Now, I wouldn't write a book on it. All I'm saying to you is that's how it appears to me. When I look at it, for example, when I see the moon in the day, you only see the highlights. The other part of the moon is blue. Why? Because it's reflecting the sky the same way as ice does. If you look at a mountain in the distance, it reflects the light, and the dark part of the mountain disappears into the sky. And the moon does exactly the same thing. So for me, it looks like it's fire and ice. You got the sun, which is giving heat and light, and the moon is cold and it's reflecting that light. And obviously it can't be 400,000 kilometers away, because how can it reflect the light through space and it doesn't warp and it doesn't get blurry? I mean, we don't have eyes like Superman, although they want you to believe that. I'm not Superman. I can't see an object that is clearly with my eyeballs that is 400,000 kilometers away, no matter how big it is. It will just be big and blurry. It won't be in focus. Your eyes have a limited range, has a limited focus. That's human. That's the way we are. We have to accept our limitations.
Well, just coming back to the spherical Earth and Sun, I guess it's worth reiterating the point that it's one thing to realise there's problems with the spinning ball model that they give us at school and on TV. It's another thing to come up in your own mind with a working flat Earth model or a working concave model or whatever model it is that you want to use to understand the natural phenomenon. They're two distinct things, and I guess it's worth pointing out to the listeners once again that this show was originally intended, and I still intend for it to be a show where we spend more time looking at the problems with the spinning ball model than we do trying to come up with the flat Earth model, because there's competing flat Earth models. I mean, just in the last 5 minutes we've discussed your view on the moon and the sun. Eric Dubai has a very different take on the moon and the sun. Crow 777, who I don't even think identifies as a flat earther, has another conception of what the moon is. So there's no flat Earth model, and one of the problems with speculating about potential flat Earth models is that oftentimes we've got no more evidence than the spinning ballers do for their claims. But two, there are people out there who, in their mind, are having cognitive dissonance. They will not address the problems of spinning ball. All they'll do is address the problems of the flat Earth models. And in their mind, so long as they can reject a flat Earth model, then they can go back to accepting spinning ball. Of course, it doesn't really work like that if you're being honest and objective, but in their minds, that's what they want to do. So if we spend too much time speculating about this flat Earth model or that flat Earth model, I think it makes it too easy for the hopelessly devoted spinning ball earthers to stick to their model. So I'd rather spend more time focusing on the problems of spinning ball. But all of that said, I did promise the listeners that we'd go through some of their questions, and a couple of their questions are based on speculation on the flat Earth model. So if you'll indulge me just with brief answers, Rory. One of the questions came from Beyond the Ice Wall, and he asks, can you ask about Antarctica, and has Rory seen the movie The Land Unknown? So very briefly, what do you say to that?
I did see parts of it, yeah. And Antarctica surrounds the entire Earth. In other words, that wall surrounds the entire Earth. I'm busy with a clip with somebody that's been there and has taken video. So another friend of mine and myself, we're going to interview them, and we'll do a clip and we'll upload it. So they've given us the footage that they took in Antarctica, and they were doing filming for scientists or whatever. So I'll upload that soon.
Good answer. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. Jordan Rains asks, and this one comes up a lot, do you believe that there is a South Pole star? And I know that we touched on this earlier in the show, but briefly, if you could summarize your thoughts, do you believe there's a South Pole star? And if so, how do you explain the South Pole stars or the South Celestial Poles, or call them what you like? Do you accept that they exist? And if you do, how do you explain them on your flat Earth model?
Yeah, well, the Southern Cross, so you have the Southern Cross, and the Southern Cross rotates around the Southern Star, so a sigma of 10 to say. So if there's a video clip, when you load this app, I can put the link. There's a video clip of by a guy who's explained it much better than I can ever explain it. So I had issues with it as well. How do you explain this, and how do you explain the North Star, and how do you explain these things? His explanation, it's clear and clear cut. So rather let me put a link there to this guy's clip, watch it, and he'll do a much better job than I can on that.
Well, what I'll do, Rory, is I'll post the link to that video as well as the ones of yours that we've played on this show in the info box underneath this video. We'll get back to Ben and to Dave in a moment. They've been waiting very patiently. Thanks for that, boys. One more question from the live chat. This is from Avalona, and you can just answer this one very briefly if you like. If you don't believe in the spinning ball model, do you believe in human evolution? Yeah, neither do I. Neither do I. I mean, to me, you can still believe in spinning ball, but I mean, evolution is so much easier. I mean, don't even get me started on evolution. But I thought it was in the questions. I thought I'd ask it to you very quickly.
How does chemicals come together and come alive? Even before evolution has to be on a foundation of something. That whole foundation that it needs to be built on. How does non-living elements become living? You can't solve that issue. Non-living things just can't become alive. So you have to go right back to the meaning. Like in the plant kingdom, the pteridophyta, how did their cycles, their fertilization cycles are back to front? So pteridophytes are one way, then the gymnosperms are the other way. How did the pteridophyte, which came first according to them, reverse their... That's crazy. Sorry.
Well, for me, it's a case of I will believe in things that seem like they can be proven. And as a kid, I was just trained to believe that evolution is real. I was also trained to believe that those who don't believe in it are crazy. They seem to want to teach you to believe that their weakest arguments, only crazy people ever question them. Like the more they tell you that it's crazy to question something, in my experience, the more chance there is that their arguments are terrible. And when I actually looked into human evolution, when I properly looked into it, when I'd been out of school for a while and thought I'm going to sit down and come to a conclusion, it didn't take me long to realize, holy crap, all this time, forgive my language, we try not to swear too much on the show, but, how can this be? This isn't based on any evidence at all. There's no missing link. There's no fossils of humans in between the previous form and this one. There's a lot of scientific hoaxes where people have pretended that they've found stuff. It's amazing how many scientific hoaxes there are, but in terms of actual proof that there was something before humans, I couldn't find any. Yeah. And it was the same with dinosaurs, right? I mean, I'm sitting here. I went through the full education system in Australia, and a lot of the people I went to school with, if they would hear me saying right now I don't believe in human evolution or I don't believe in dinosaurs, they would think that I must have converted to some kind of Christian cult or something. Far from it. I decided to look for the evidence, and what do you know? You can't show me one full skeleton of a stegosaurus or of a brontosaurus or a pterodactyl. You can't give me one full fossilized version of any of these things, but I'm supposed to believe that not only was there one, there was thousands of each one of these, subspecies of dinosaurs. I mean, when I was a kid, there was this dinosaur magazine, and it came out once every couple of weeks, and each episode came with its own little skeleton piece, and over the 20 volumes of the book, you made your own little sculpture of a dinosaur, right? And I used to get those thinking I was learning about something real. I was learning about fairy tales, and yet I was also trained that the people who question this fairy tale, they're the crazy ones. That's how much of a messed up world we live in. You don't even have to... You can still believe in the spinning ball, but you've got no reason to believe in dinosaurs and human evolution other than the indoctrination that you got given at school. For me, evolution and dinosaurs, open and shut case. We've been had.
Yeah, I haven't looked much into the dinosaur issue. I think a lot of it is fabricated. Some of it may be real. I don't know. I haven't, as I said, I haven't really looked into it. But what doesn't make sense is that the Earth now is getting overpopulated. right? So scientists are saying that the population is rising and we're getting overpopulated. So what happened to the other 200,000 years of human existence on Earth? Surely the Earth would have been overpopulated a long time ago.
Well, they're trying to tell us that there's almost 7 billion people on the planet. And then I say to people, so wait, you think that you're awake and you don't trust your government. You know the government lies to affect an agenda, but you're going to believe them that there's 7 billion humans. 7 billion. How many humans would you need working full-time to count even a rough guess of 7 billion? I mean, it's outrageous. And then they'll say, well, why would they lie about it? Are you kidding? Why would they lie about anything? I mean, if there's something in it for them, they'll lie. And right now in school, they're teaching kids that we consume too much, that our lifestyles, we consume too much. We need to learn to conserve. We need to learn to treat the earth better by having less. They're essentially teaching the peasants that the peasants have too much. And it's not just that you have too much. Oh, China and India, they're developing. And if they get as much as you've got, the earth can't sustain it. So you need to learn to live on less. People can't see that the people who run the show, the rulers, are trying to train the peasants to actually want less. And for the most part, it's working because the peasants, even the ones who think they're awake, think that there's too many peasants. And they never stop to wonder, how do I know there's 7 billion other peasants on the planet? I mean, the level of programming in our brains goes so deep that I'm sure there's lots of people listening to this who have never even questioned whether there's 7 billion people. And right now they're thinking, gee, do I really have any evidence for that? And my answer to you is no, you don't. You've got the word of a bunch of people who you don't trust on anything else, but you're going to trust them on spinning ball and on 7 billion. It's ridiculous, Rory.
Yeah, you need to question, you need to question everything. And there's nothing wrong. It doesn't mean you have to become cynical, but the fact is they're not your friends. They are not going to do anything that's going to benefit you. That is a fact. And in my short, miserable life on Earth, I've learned that the hard way, is that they are not going to do anything that's really going to benefit you, because your purpose is to be a working slave, to be a mindless robot, to do your functions and to work like a mindless robot, and then they stay in power. And that's what it's about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's a point that I've made, and I do apologise for going on a bit here, but it's a point that I make to people. If you can convince the peasants, and look, some people don't like me using the word peasants, if you can convince the people that you rule over, call them whatever you want, if you can convince them that they're a tiny little speck of dust on a big ball that's a tiny little speck of dust, in a universe of billions of specks of dust that has been here for billions of years and will be here for billions more, then right there and then you can create in their mind a worldview that they are completely and utterly insignificant. Just like that. Yep. And once they stop believing that there's something special, that their brothers and sisters on this earth are something special, once they stop believing in that, once they stop having faith in who they really are and what we really are all about, and that there's something bigger than us that we should be working towards, once they don't have that faith, they're just as malleable as the sheep in a pen. And that's exactly what we're living in. And people can't see that. I mean, the more that I think about this, the more I think to myself, the rulers have no reason to tell us the truth about the shape of the earth. I mean, the fact...
Yeah, they want to just keep that whole thing going. I mean, look at the images of Mars. Now, I look at that and I say the atmosphere must be like Earth for them to take photographs like that, because we know that the sunlight reacts with the air. And Mars has got none of that. I mean, how can an image of Mars look like the same light consistency as Earth? Something's horribly wrong there. So they want to just keep it that all these planets, they just all created themselves and we just a ball. And that's the way it is. And it's far, the truth is it's not like that.
No, they've got every reason to lie to us, and we have every reason to question everything they told us at school. And that's what I like to think that we do on this show. I have indulged myself a little bit, so I apologise to Dave and to Ben. It is a roundtable. We're going to wrap the show up relatively soon. We try not to go too far beyond 2 hours, but it's been a very entertaining chat. I've enjoyed it. So we'll go a little bit over 2 hours if that's cool with you there, Rory. We'll go first to Dave. Dave, it's an open season now. Throw your questions or comments in and take it away.
Okay, well, I just wanted to put a couple of comments in about, first about evolution. There's a guy on YouTube called Trey Smith. That's Trey, Trey Smith. He talks about evolution, and if you watch his presentation, it's about 3 hours long, it virtually blows evolution out the water. one of the things he says that is absolutely true, that you can't really argue with, is that they say that birds evolved from dinosaurs. Yeah, so a dinosaur's arm basically turned into a wing, and you got birds. Well, as he quite rightly points out, if natural selection is true, then you'll get a bad arm long before you get a good wing. So there's no way that any animal could change from a dinosaur to a bird. It would have died out in the meantime.
If you're driving in your car and you stick the head out the window, you know how difficult it is to breathe. You can't breathe the force of the air. Yet a bird can breathe. So how's the bird doing it? Well, go and Google it. It's actually very interesting how the pressure in his lungs gets distributed to the bird's body, and how that pressure gets released. And remember, the bird's feathers are hollow, and that plays a part in that whole mechanism. It's interesting. It's worthwhile looking into.
Exactly. Same story with horses that apparently turned into giraffes so they could get to the top branches of a tree. The mechanism inside a giraffe's neck to actually support that neck, to get the blood pumping up to that neck, and all the valves that allow the giraffe to be able to bend down without passing out. That's not within the makeup of a horse. They're two entirely different species, and there is no evidence at all anywhere that anything has changed from one species to another. Nothing. So that's evolution is out of the water. The idea that 7 billion people are on this planet, well, you made a good point, John, that we don't know. We've just been told. And even if that is true, a guy called Max Egan worked out a long time ago that you could give every man, woman and child a quarter acre of land in Australia and still have half of Queensland left over, and the rest of the world, So overpopulation, I don't think so. And to argue against the point that there's 7 billion, well, in order to keep the population just stable, you need a replacement rate of 2.1 children. So basically, every woman has to basically come up with about 2.1 just to keep the population stable. But all the Western countries have been at a replacement rate of significantly below that, between 1.8 and 1.6, which means that we're in an exponential decline. And this might be a perception of mine, but I've been, going around England to different towns and doing talks and stuff, and I'm noticing there's significantly less people around, and in this country we've had 2 influxes of people from different countries. When my parents came over in the 60s. The people were being brought in from the Caribbean and India, and they were really there to do the jobs that nobody else was doing, because there were just too many jobs, not enough people. Lately, it's been Eastern Europeans, because I think that the black people and Indian people were brought over to keep the numbers up. But they looked fairly obvious. Now it's Eastern Europeans. Well, you walk through a town centre, you can't tell who's Eastern European and who's not. So I would suggest that the population is nosediving, but people aren't noticing it because there's always a nice fresh influx of completely white-looking faces. So you don't notice it. So you can't believe anything.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry to just blast all that off. Yeah.
Hey, this is the ball of skeptics. We can be skeptical of anything. And really, that's what this is about right now. We're saying, I'm saying, going back to the dinosaurs very quickly, we'll throw to Ben in a moment, but very quickly, what I'm saying is dinosaurs could be possible, sure, but I grew up thinking that we had lots of evidence for it. And then when I actually looked into the evidence, I found out that we don't have a single complete stegosaurus. You know what I mean? So how come I was raised to believe that there wasn't just one Stegosaurus? There was a whole group of them, like a whole breed of them. You know what I mean? And I fully understand that I'm not using the proper genealogical or scientific or biological words here. Like I'm not claiming that the word breed is applicable to dinosaurs, but you get what I'm saying. I was raised to believe that there were lots of brontosauruses, lots of pterodactyls, and now I find out we don't even have one complete fossilized version of any of these things. Is it possible they existed? Sure, but look, if you gave me a few bones of a Pikachu, would I believe that there were lots of Pikachus? No. And the only reason why people like me believed that there were these things called brontosauruses was because we grew up watching movies like The Land Before Time. And we internalized this idea that there really was a land before my time full of these giant lizards. And so it's very hard for people to then realize, oh, there's no real evidence for it. I'm going to have to stop believing in it. Most people would prefer to go on believing the fairy tale. And for me, that's what dinosaurs are. They're a fairy tale just like Pokemon, except that Pokemon is presented as a fake show. Dinosaurs are presented as being real, and so people believe in dinosaurs. It's amazing to me.
I kind of wanted to say something about that as well. I forgot to mention it. I believe dinosaurs were real, but they weren't around or sort of killed off 65 million years ago. Before 1885, there was no word for dinosaur. The word dinosaur sort of appeared around about 1885. Before that, the word for these animals was dragon, and there was a lot of there was a lot of no, I can't answer that. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. There was a lot of there's a lot of legends and stories, not just legends, but stories of of dragons. And, you know, even people like Marco Polo telling stories of how the Chinese emperor was breeding these dragons to pull these chariots along. You know, if you actually start looking for these stories, they appear. So yeah, I do believe that there were dinosaurs, but they weren't they weren't sort of they didn't die off millions of years ago. Especially when they found red blood cells and soft tissue from T-Rexes just recently. So, you know, you can't believe anything.
Well, the thing that makes me question dinosaurs is that, you know, if a body today, like a horse, for example, or a cow, whatever, how long does it take for the body to deteriorate? Well, it's like 10 years. And if the conditions are good, 15 years. So they've got these dinosaurs that are fossilized, and they're like millions of years old, hundreds of thousands of years old. So, you know, something doesn't add up. Something doesn't look right. And the other thing is that, which I wasn't aware of, only recently found out, is that I read an article in this one museum, and they're saying, no, that the dinosaurs on display, it's not the dinosaurs that they found. It's not the real bones. They actually made a replica, and what you're seeing is an artificial replica of what they dug up. Mm-hmm. So where's the real bones? Well, apparently these are locked up in some safe, and they won't show them to you because they're too valuable. Yeah, it's bizarre.
You know, I don't want to get too tangential again, but we were discussing recently the Stephen Hawking issue, and when you look at some of the things that the people who run the show are willing to lie about, the notion that they'd lie about a few bones being an entire, you know, species of lizard, not only is it not far-fetched, it actually makes perfect sense. But Ben, you've been so patient there, mate. I know you dropped out for a few minutes there. You're back now. We're going to wrap the show up relatively soon. So just in a general sense, any more questions or comments you want to throw to Rory or from my perspective?
Yeah, I'm really enjoying listening to his points of view, and on you know, it's really a big, vast subject, and I think there's like a spiritual dynamic to it all. It's really a case of like you know, scientism, which is like no longer real science, and it has become a religion itself, versus the idea of a creator and creation. And I think, you know, the overall big picture is like this is part of the mind control and changing people's reality. You know, and all these subjects like evolution and creation and the current scientific model, like all connect when when talking about where we are living, and relates to the importance of this subject and people's behaviour and tolerance for abuse, and how what's really going on in the world and what's been going on in the world. And I think this is a big part of the massive deception that's been employed against us. And I'm really enjoying the existential conversation and listening to you talk about that. One of the things I wanted to pick your brain about, Rory, was to do with to do with the horizon aspect and horizon curvature. And I mean, you made some videos about this. How and where we can see curvature, and how if we leave a sphere, the horizon should drop below, and so on. I was hoping if you could just talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, well, from my perspective, for example, if I'm by the ocean, so somebody will take a photograph and say, well, you see, there's a curve there. Well, if there's a curve in front of you, just think about it. It can't just be a curve. It has to have a shape, a three-dimensional shape. So if there's a curve, it has to curve along your X line, but also your Y, your Z rather, back in space. So there'd be a bump. And if the sun was on your right-hand side, well, then there'd be a shed on the left-hand side of the curve. You can't have a bump, and then the sun's up there, and then there's the lighting on that bump is the same. And then as the sun moves over, well, there'll be a shadow on the right. So if you're standing and there's a hump in front of you and the sun sets, how can it be all lit? It's just totally logical. So we've been taught not to think, and we've been taught not to look. It's as simple as that. And the horizon it's flat, and it's flat 360 degrees around you. And as you elevate your position, the higher you go, if you go in a balloon slowly, you'll find that what happens to your line of sight, it actually increases. It extends further out because of the height, but it's still always eye level. So as you go higher and higher and higher, and eventually at some point, the land drops below you. But there's a limit in the human's vision. Now, our eyes are only limited size. For example, if you take a telescope, the length of the telescope is making up for if you take your eye, it's round, obviously, but there's only a certain amount of length between the front of your eye and the back of your eye. So use a telescope to extend your view into the horizon. The bigger the telescope, the longer the telescope, in other words, the longer the length and the wider the lens, you extend your view down the horizon. So if the horizon was curved, what's the point of making these telescopes? Because you can't see around the curve of a ball. Why would they waste their time in making these telescopes? It's just pointless. So a telescope doesn't just make things bigger. It does do that. And like, for example, if I've got a 500mm lens, camera lens, and I compare it to a 55 or a 70-300 lens, the 70-300 is going to extend my horizon line further back and also help me focus. So I've got a focal point along that lens line, so I can pull my focus and extend my focus to anywhere along that length that I want to focus on. But I can also zoom in. In other words, make that focal area bigger. So it does three different things. But the point is, it's extending your vision into the horizon. Now, if there was a ship that had gone behind the horizon, you couldn't extend your vision into that. You'd only make the ship bigger. And if the ship was all blurry, well, then you just, as you focus and as you zoom in, you're just going to have a blurry ship. The point is, lenses for camera and telescopes only work on a flat surface. It's logical. Sorry, I hope that answers.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good stuff, man. I really like your earlier point about the focus on, how we can see the detail on the moon. How is that possible being so far away? As they say it is, and I thought that's a really good point you made.
Thanks,
man.
Yeah, but here's another issue. I mean, people just don't think. I've got a lens on my camera, right? So now I'm focusing on the clouds, and behind the clouds is the moon. So I only have to set my focus a smidgen, and I'm focused on the moon. Well, what's the distance between the clouds and the moon, if the model is right? 400,000 kilometers. How can a smidgen on my focal point now bring the moon into focus if it's 400,000 kilometers? No. The reason why I can pull my focus from the clouds to the moon is because the moon is just behind the clouds. That's how I can focus on it. You understand what I'm saying? In other words, if I'm standing here and I've got a tree in front of me, then there's a cloud and there's the moon. So I can focus on the tree. Now I'm going to have to extend my focal point quite a bit until the clouds are in focus, right? And then just a smidgen more, and then the moon's in focus. Well, if the moon's 400,000 kilometers, I should be focusing and focusing and focusing and pulling that focus so I can get that distance. I don't have to do that. That simple little thing right there tells you the moon is not 400,000 kilometers away from you. It just doesn't make sense. It defeats the whole point of having a zoom lens so I can film the moon. Sorry for jumping in, but does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's good stuff, man. I'll throw it back to John there.
Oh, look, what we're going to do is I think we're coming towards the end. I like round time, so 2 hours 30 I think will be a good time to finish this off. So we've got about 12 or 13 minutes left, and I have been speaking a bit too much, so I'll give you another chance, Ben. Any other points you want to make? Then we'll throw to Dave, and then we'll come back for final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just really enjoying the listening to Rory talk about all these different kind of issues. I mean, that whole moon thing, and now he's talking about the lenses there. It's just great stuff. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think this whole subject matter really, has to deal with how people are thinking, our reality, illusions. I mean, and it takes like an artist to be able to illustrate the essence of how one can create an illusion and understand an illusion. And I think, Rory and, his name is My Perspective, and I think he's really doing that very well. So yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying it. Dave, you got any more questions for Rory?
Not so much a question, but maybe a comment on something you said earlier about the moon and how the focus issue. Well, I find that when you try and explain things to people when they don't fully understand issues like focus, you also end up getting arguments because obviously people don't understand how it works. So you get tons of arguments and say, oh no, it doesn't work like that, blah blah blah. But if you show them something that they can't argue with, it usually changes their perspective. And as far as the moon's concerned, the thing I show people is when you see pictures of the moon in clouds, what you find is the clouds closest to the moon are lit up brightly, but the clouds further away aren't. So it shows you that the moon has to be very, very close. Otherwise, all the clouds would be lit up. So there are lots of ways of trying to elucidate this idea to people because some won't get the more technical issues.
Yeah, and the simplest something is like that issue, and I've used it before, that the moonlight only illuminates that, but people understand that more easily. They accept it because they can see it with their eyes. So sometimes the best way to get the point across is to be simple and to use simple everyday things. And you don't need to come up with big mathematical equations. Well, I'm not good at math. But nowadays you can use math to prove anything. You can use math to prove that a camel can balance on the pin of on the head of a pin.
Math.
To say anything.
Yeah, especially with the maths we've got a fake version of maths when we now know that the world, the universe, works along the Fibonacci and golden mean number rather than this linear progression. Again, we've been sold a fake bill of goods.
Well, if you just philosophy and math always gone hand in hand. So the math that we're using and the philosophy, you can trace it from Babylon. You can trace it down. Or with Babylon, Darius and Cyrus conquered Babylon. Then you had the Persians and the Medes that were the world power. Now their system of maths was totally different from the Babylonian. You had guys like Al-Biruni and another guy called Al-Khwarizmi. These were mathematical geniuses. We never hear about them. All we hear about is Socrates and Plato, Aristotle. Aristotle was tutored by Plato, and if you go and you just search on Aristotle, for example, they'll tell you that he's a philosopher, mathematician. Plato, philosopher, mathematician. All of them, Socrates, Plato, right down to Galileo. Same, philosophy, mathematician. Or even Euclid of Alexandria, who lived at that time. He's viewed by the Freemasons as like one of the big pillars of their community, through their history. And all of these were philosophers and mathematicians. And that's all it is. It's a philosophy. Doesn't mean it's true.
Well, I'll tell you what, guys, we're going to have to wrap the show up very soon. I hate to interject, but you'll be more than welcome if you'd like to come back again in the future, Rory, because I've really enjoyed having you here, and the live chat have as well. Let me finish off. What we'll do now is I want to read out a few comments from the live chat that I've written down, and then if you want to respond to any of them, you can, and then we'll go around the round table, we'll get final thoughts, and we'll wrap the show up. How's that sound?
Yeah, great.
So, and again, look, we've had more than 60 people watching live for most of the show. There's about 70 now, so let me say once again, thank you to everyone for coming out. Most of you are open-minded to questioning these things. I appreciate that. Some of you are not quite as open-minded, but as long as you're polite and civil, you're still welcome in the chat. And I haven't really had to ban anyone tonight, so it's been terrific. Let me read out just a few comments, rather. And if I start to slur my words, it's 1 o'clock in the morning tomorrow here. It's already Thursday morning, so please forgive me. Elizabeth Sienna, who I think is a new listener, says, we need to admit that we know very little truth. And let me just say on that, that's where I come from this. I don't believe I know that there were no dinosaurs. I just know that when I've looked at the evidence, it wasn't very convincing, so I'm not convinced. And for me, that's what skepticism is all about. It's saying, I will believe something if you give me the evidence. When you look into the evidence for dinosaurs, other than the fact that they teach you at school and that everyone believes it, there's not as much evidence as you'd think, so I stopped believing it. Could they be real? Sure, I'm not saying they definitely didn't exist. I'm saying the evidence I've been given doesn't convince me, so I don't believe it. For me, that's what it's all about, admitting that there are things that we just don't know. Learn of the Jesuit Order says that he doesn't believe dinosaurs existed, but he can't prove that they didn't, and that kind of reiterates what I'm saying. I don't think any of us on this panel are saying we can prove that they didn't exist. In fact, Dave thinks that they did exist, and isn't it lovely, Dave, that you and I can disagree on that, but we can still get along? I think that's what it's all about. I'll move on to Enchanted Wanderer says, I wonder why toilet water spins differently in the northern and southern hemisphere. And Robert Haynes asked a similar question. Well, if you two really wonder about that, or if anybody else wonders about that, again, I'll recommend, and I've recommended this in the past, you ought to go to places like the International Flat Earth Research Society, ifas.boards.net. I'll link to them underneath this video in the info box. But again, you can find this for yourself, ifas.boards.net. You can go and check the threads there. And what you'll learn if you do take just a few minutes to do that is that that's one of the worst arguments for spinning ball theory. And the fact that there are still people out there using that to argue for spinning ball theory, pardon me, to argue for spinning ball theory or to argue against flat Earth, it shows me that they're not actually doing their own research. They're coming into chats like ours and peddling this silly nonsense about the water spinning in different ways in different hemispheres. You guys clearly aren't doing your research, and that's fine. You don't have to do your research, but I think it's a bit disrespectful to then come into a chat and spam spinning ball when you're clearly not going and doing your own research. Right? Really, if you're interested in this, do your own research. That's what it's all about. Do the research. It's really fun when you start. Give it a try. Max Malone says, Rory is an awesome guest. This is the best podcast on YouTube. It's on the other end of the spectrum to we'll do it lousy. Those are his words, not mine. That's Max Malone. So, Max, thanks for dropping by and thanks for the positive comment. Lord Rollo says that if Rory wasn't such a Bible hugger, I would have enjoyed the show more. Well, I'm glad you could stick around for us in the live chat there, Rollo. You have to understand, Rory, that Lord Rollo is one of our resident...
Look, I hear what he's saying, and as I said, I understand where people are coming from.
Yeah.
Just because they've been disappointed so many times, I don't blame them at all.
That's the way. Well, Honest Trolling says that this is in response to the people who are trying to take apart the flat Earth models. Honest Trolling says this is the discovery phase. Nobody's claiming to have a perfect model. We're all just in agreement that the official model stinks, and that's exactly what I'm saying. I don't have a flat Earth model at all. I get on people on the show like yourself, Rory. You've got your flat Earth model, or you've got something approximating one. Eric Dubai will join us next week. He has what he would argue is a pretty comprehensive flat Earth model. We can look at that. We're happy to look at the flat Earth models, but what most of us on this show have in common, and what many of our listeners have in common, is we're at least questioning the spinning ball model. That's the first step. And once you start questioning it, you realize there's so many problems with it. That's the fundamental thing that we've all got in common. And if we spend more time focusing on that and less time focusing on tearing down each other's flat Earth models, we're better off. And in saying that, at the same time, if we can challenge each other's flat Earth models, over time, we might come to one that is the strongest. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't challenge each other's flat Earth models. I'm saying if we're going to challenge flat Earth models, good, let's also challenge spinning ball. And if you're only challenging flat Earth, then really all you're doing is spamming the spinning ball. And you can do that elsewhere. You don't have to do that here. Maddie V. Phuket says that, and I don't know if the pronunciation here is good, so forgive me. He says that from Chiang Bay to Rakayai Island in Phuket is 24 kilometres. He says that he could see it clearly this morning. Now, let's do some quick maths. 24 kilometres, what's that? 14 miles, give or take? Let's just go with 14 miles. What's 14 squared? 144, Let's say, I'm going to be conservative here. Let's say that should be roughly 160 times. Look, that's a very big curvature that should exist, okay? Forgive me for not being able to do the maths there, but Matrix is pretty good at it. The point is there should be a lot of curvature there, and it doesn't exist according to Matty V in Phuket, and many people are noticing this. The curvature that should be there isn't there, right? We've got a big
130 feet.
130 feet. Thank you, Dave. 130 feet. Let's go with that figure. Matty V Phuket is telling us that this curvature isn't there. If you can't explain why the curvature isn't there, I would argue you should spend more time trying to take down spinning ball model, since that's what's being taught to your kids and everybody around you, rather than trying to take down the various flat Earth models. But that's just me. So there's a bunch of comments from the live chat. Apologies to those that I didn't read out the comments from. There's been lots of terrific comments and questions in the live chat. I'm doing my best to get them out. But just based on what you heard there, Rory, any comments that you'd like to make through, as a reply to any of that?
Yeah. I appreciate the positive comments and the negative comments. And as the one person said, we just don't know. We at the bottom end of this thing. We at the learning starting phase. So we must avoid being dogmatic and avoid speculating as much as you can. But there's nothing wrong with looking and thinking. And I encourage people, look, think, and appreciate. Look at the birds, look at the sun, look at these things, appreciate them, because that's the world that Creator created for us to live in. We've just been given a fake world that they want us to live in so they can exploit us to the limit.
Good stuff, mate. Well, what we're going to do now is we're going to go around the round table and get final thoughts for episode 4. So we'll start with you there, Dave. I'm glad that you could make it today. And do you want to briefly tell us why you didn't think you'd make it and why you were able to in the end? I heard through the grapevine that it's actually kind of relevant to what we're discussing tonight.
Oh, I don't know about that, because I must be travelling today, and the train that I was going to go on was derailed, so I couldn't make it. I couldn't make the journey, so I was back here. I don't know how relevant that is, but yes. I wasn't meant to be here. It just turned out that I ended up back here. So, so thoughts on today's show? I'm really honoured to be part of a show with Rory, especially since coming across you via a trolling debunking video. But it's been a great show, and I'm happy to have been here.
Good stuff, mate. Well, thanks for joining us. We'll throw to you there, Ben. You haven't got as much of a chance to speak tonight as usual. We'll make sure you get more of a go next week. Any final thoughts for episode 4 with Rory Cooper?
Yeah, I've been really enjoying the listening to you guys chat and listening to Rory in particular. Express his different views on all kinds of subjects that all kind of tie in and relate to the flat Earth discussion. And we've got lots more questions. I'd like to ask him much more, and hopefully we can have him on again soon.
Excellent stuff. Oh, sorry, Ben, you go. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, I just really enjoyed the show. Yeah, been cool, man.
Excellent. Well, I've had a lot of fun. We've gone a little bit over the 2 hours, but I think it's been well worth it. And the Skype hasn't been a problem. This is the first time we've tried to use Skype and Google Hangouts simultaneously, and it's actually worked pretty well, I think. So that's another thing that we can roll on if we have to in the future. Rory, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us. I understand that in your part of the world it's essentially, mid-afternoon right now, so you've taken out time of your Wednesday to join us. I really appreciate it. The feedback that we've gotten in the live chat about your appearance today has been so positive. There's been 1 or 2 people like old mate Lord Rollo who don't like the Bible stuff, but apart from that, it's been completely positive. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us, and I want to give you the chance to get your final thoughts in, and then I'm going to play us out with the...
No, guys, I just want to say thank you for having me, and I enjoyed our chat, and thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, come on, mate. It's been a long show. Surely you've got more for us than that. Firstly, people can find you at My Perspective on YouTube. We'll link to that underneath this show on a info box on YouTube. Is there 1 or 2 videos in particular that you'd recommend people check out?
Angles, and I think it's called
Curves and angles on the flat Earth. Get your head around that, because that explains a lot. That's quite simple. I would recommend that one.
All right, excellent. Well, once again, I know I've said it a few times. I'll say it again. We're really thankful you've been on the show. Will you join us again in the future, Rory?
Yeah, you're breaking up a bit, but
definitely, yes, love to. Thank you.
Oh, not a problem. Well, we'll go to a song to play us out for tonight. My final thoughts are I've really enjoyed it. This is the 4th official episode that we've done, and so far I've found it a very rewarding experience, and I've made this point before, I'll make it again. The research that you do, if you take the time to do it, is very rewarding, and if it turns out that you live on a spinning ball, wouldn't you prefer to know all the good arguments for the ball and all the bad arguments? And how are you going to find out if you don't test the arguments? And how will you find out if the arguments are good or bad if you won't go and test them with the people who are going to challenge them, like the people at ifas.boards.net? If you're genuinely interested in the research, then there's plenty of resources to access to challenge the ideas. And if you're still pushing Eratosthenes, sticks and shadows, or if you're still pushing water spinning different directions in northern southern hemisphere, you clearly haven't done your research. And I encourage you and I implore you to go and do the research. And the worst case scenario is you'll prove that you're on a spinning ball, but then you'll know what the good arguments are for it, rather than sticks and stones and water spinning the wrong way, because those are terrible, terrible arguments, and you can do a lot better. We're going to play out with a song. We actually used it last week. This is Hot Chip with Emotion Sickness. This has been the Ball There Skeptic Roundtable, episode 4. I'm your host, John LeBon. You've been joined by Matrix Decode. David Weiss of Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole was here earlier on. We had Allegedly Dave, aka D Murphy. I'll link to all of their channels in the info box underneath this on YouTube. And thank you so much to Rory Cooper of My Perspective. His links will be there, and I can't encourage you enough to go and check his work out, because it'll help you get your head around a concept that seems difficult at first but makes more and more sense the more time you look into it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you at about 8 a.m. Wednesday, New York time next week, 10 p.m. Brisbane time. And until then, make sure you take care of yourself and keep questioning things. That's what your brain is for. Keep questioning.